The Beast Core assessment is about to start, and the instructor explains that the next assessment will determine whether the remaining candidates are truly qualified to become members of Blazing Blood. Each participant will receive a special wrist guard and insert a Beast Core into it. The machine will then measure their compatibility with the core. Anyone who scores below 40% will be eliminated immediately. He adds that Beast Cores only form inside Hound-class aberrations or stronger monsters. The more powerful the aberration is, the higher the quality of its core. However, every warrior has a different affinity, and the abilities they awaken can fall into elemental, physical enhancement, or support categories. The wrist guards used for the test are only low-grade equipment. Those who successfully enter the combat division will eventually receive stronger beast cores and advanced aberration armaments. With the explanation finished, the assessment begins. Then this angry-looking dude, Zhang Jin, walks up to the testing platform, determined to humiliate our guy because last time his older brother was used by our MC to sweep the floor with his face. He then picks up the stone, put it in the wrist guard, and scores 60% affinity with D rank. Next is this talented girl. Ying steps forward and reveals an incredible affinity score of 78%, shocking everyone in the room. Finally, Yan Hao's name is called. Hao calmly walks toward the testing platform, picks up the core and inserts it into his wrist guard. Then the machine begins malfunctioning, displaying he had 0 affinity. Then the core vanished, like Hao's body swallowed it whole. His left hand mutates in seconds, red scales, a sharp claw. But he doesn't go berserk. He stays calm and in control. That's when everyone understands already. Hao isn't just surviving the red mist, he's growing through it. Each core he absorbs can raise his strength and even awaken a new ability. To understand the story better, let's go back to the beginning. Something sinister happens in the country as a strange, blood-colored mist spreads across every city. Humans who get caught within the mist undergo rampant mutations shortly before dying violently. Similarly, the fog also mutates the animals, but rather than dying, they become aberrations, terrifying creatures with bizarre abilities. The aberrations become threats as they destroy cities in their numbers, bringing terror to the citizens. 3 days earlier, shortly before the pandemic began, reports about the red mist circulated, driving the citizens into a panic as they tried to evacuate. The roads then get clogged up as a result. While the citizens are held up in traffic, something unexpected happens as red mist suddenly starts spreading in the area. Shortly after, a commotion erupts as a monster appears in the middle of the road, causing various accidents. Yan Hao's family happened to have gotten involved in a terrible accident as well, leading to his parents getting stuck in their seats. Seeing the monster closing in, Hao's parents urge him to get down from the car and escape immediately with his sister. They make him promise to protect her, as they know they do not have much time left. Hao tries to rescue them, but his attempt fails as a different monster appears and crushes the car with their parents still in it. By this time, numerous monsters begin to appear, so Hao realizes they have to act quickly. Although Xiao tries to stay back, he drags her along as they make a run for it. They eventually get to a safe spot where they hide quietly from the monsters. Suddenly, red marks begin to appear on the siblings' faces, causing them to groan in pain. Hao then realizes that it must have been as a result of the red mist they inhaled while escaping. Thinking quickly, he immediately pours some water on a handkerchief and instructs his sister to use it to cover her mouth and nose. The pain in his body then suddenly gets unbearable as he feels something trying to force its way out. While he tries to subdue the pain so as not to worry his sister, they get spotted by a huge monster. They immediately kick to their feet, but before they get far enough, they run into an even more ferocious-looking monster. Like that's not enough. A bunch of other monsters in the area join in, surrounding the siblings. At this point, Hao knows they're cooked, but he hugs his sister tightly, assuring her that he'll protect her no matter what happens. He then wonders to himself if they're really going to die or if something miraculous is going to come and save them. After realizing they've been cornered outside, Hao grabs Xue and runs back into the building. There, he picks up a stick and charges at an aberration inside to smack it away, but unfortunately the stick breaks upon contact without having any effect. The monster then pounces on him, but Hao forcefully holds its fangs from closing in on him. Thankfully, she finds a crossbow and shoots the creature in the eye, giving enough time for Hao to recover. Unfortunately for her, the monster charges right at her, so she runs off based on her brother's orders. At that point, the red miasma effect kicks in, and Hao struggles to remain conscious. Suddenly, he sees his beloved sister has tripped, and the monster homes in on her, so Hao goes into a rage and crashes a wall on it. He immediately lands on the creature and stabs it multiple times. Xie is surprised and horrified to see her brother in such a berserk state, so she rushes to him and hugs Hao while telling him to stop. While clinging to him, Xie cries while begging Hao and telling him she's okay. Her voice rings through his head, and he recalls his parents' last words, telling him to take good care of Xue. He has a vision of them telling him to ensure he and his sister survive. After the vision, Xie's voice echoes through the darkness, and he eventually snaps back to reality. He sees his worried sister, and then apologizes for making her worry. Xie asks him if he's okay, but as he replies to her, he sees a flying aberration charging at them through the window, so he quickly carries Shui away just before the creature crashes into the building. As if that wasn't enough, the monster charges at them, but Hao grabs a steel bar and strikes a home run with the creature while yelling at it to get away from his sister. This time around, the monster is sent crashing into the ceiling. While it's covered with a huge load of debris and dust, Hao tells Xue to hide while he takes on the monsters. At first, Xue worries if he'll be fine, going up against all of them, but then she worries about his mental state, so she hugs him and asks him not to go. Hao pets her head and assures her that he won't snap. He rubs his head with hers and asks her to wait for him because he'll be back for her. Xue then asks him to promise her he'll come back safe and sound, so he does as asked. After a while, Hao walks out of the building while holding on to the rod. He notes that hunting and absorbing the aberration's blood-colored energy will make him stronger. Hao walks to a heinous creature and says the energy he'll get from it after taking it down will be far greater than the others he's faced so far. And with such energy, he'll be strong enough to protect his energy. Hao then yells at it, hoping it'll charge at him, but it sends wolf-like creatures at him. Surprised that the boss doesn't want to confront him directly, Hao fights the foot monsters, pounding their heads with the rod. He eventually gets bitten, but he rips the aberration apart. Enraged, Hao's hands are covered in an exoskeleton, and he absorbs the miasma from the dead creatures. While Hao basks in the new power surge, the dragon aberration spots a warcraft, so it signals to its underlings to scram. Hao doesn't understand what's going on, but by the time he notices, he sees a missile heading his way. In that same moment, Xue heads towards the entrance to check up on him. Hao sees her and yells at her to go back, but it's too late because the missile strikes where they are. The loud explosion scatters the area, and shortly after, a group of soldiers scavenge the area, looking for survivors. They find Hao but claim he's been infected while they take Xue and fly off. Hao powerlessly watches as they whisk her away. Half a year after the pandemic began in the city, Hao wakes up on a rooftop from the same repetitive nightmare where his sister tries to reach out to him to save her. When the incident happened, he had caught a glimpse of some military agents rescuing his sister but had no idea where she was taken. Over time, he has searched every local shelter in the area but still couldn't find any traces of her. Now, he has decided to join the Border Patrol, because in any pandemic situation like this, only the army has the automatic clearance to gather intel and travel freely. Reporting late to his post, the patrol team's captain lashes out at Hao severely, calling him an incompetent rookie before giving him his daily allocation of duty. Along with the red mist that erupted a year and a half ago, a crimson spire had also spawned from nowhere, creating a different kind of mist, which is also toxic to living things. For this cause, the surviving humans have been forced to seek shelter on the borderlands, far away from the mists. While Hao wonders if the particular monster that led to him being separated from his sister is still alive, the captain yaps to the team about the special response team dealing with a group of aberrations outside the border. The special response team is so efficient that they doubt if their assistance will be needed in dealing with the monsters. Meanwhile, from Hao's duty post, he notices something unusual about the fog, and it only takes him a little time to realize that something massive is approaching them. Luckily, another patrol member notices it, but when he points it out to the captain tells him to stop making a fuss over nothing. Suddenly, agents from the Special Response Unit are seen charging at them through the fog. When they try to find out the cause, the agents instruct them to run. Realizing that something dangerous is approaching, the captain orders the Border Patrol agents to fall back immediately. Before he gets a chance to leave, an aberration emerges from the fog and starts to attack him. However, Hao, who has been watching from a high building the whole time, decides to make a move. He jumps from the building and lands on the monster's back, crushing it to death. Almost immediately, a second monster shows up, so he does his partial transformation and rips it apart. As a result of the fog and commotion, the agents can't tell what's going on. Hao then absorbs power from the aberrations he took down, so he feels himself practically grow stronger. A few more aberrations show up in the mist, and rather than being scared, Hao gets more excited at the amount of power he'd gain when he takes them down. Before he can make a move, a massive attack gets fired from the other side of the fog, wiping out the majority of the aberrations and leaving him surprised. Turning around, Hao identifies the person responsible as Rui, the Blazing Blood Detachment captain. He panics while she approaches because there is a chance that she might have seen him in his mutant form. Still, he quickly changes back before she gets to him. While her men clean out the remaining monsters in the area, Hao surrenders himself to Rui to prove that he's human. He introduces himself as a member of the patrol team, but she doesn't believe him. Instead, she asks why he's in the midst of the fog without a weapon. At the camp, after taking down the aberrations, Officer Rui reads through the casualty reports, and after she finishes, Hao asks her why he's been detained. He tells her he's a victim, but she tells him he left his post in the evening for 2 hours without authorization, and right after he returned, the Crimson outbreak happened. Rui looks at his record and asks Hao for an explanation. Realizing he's screwed, Hao tries to bluff his way around the situation by telling her that his captain was aware of him slacking off. But to his surprise, another officer snitches on Hao by informing Rui that Hao is usually late to his mission, and the captain always lets him get away. Annoyed, Hao glares daggers at the soldier while silently vowing to deal with him if the man snitches too much about him. While Rui talks about his team being troublesome, the captain wakes up after being bundled up and treated like a mummy. Rui went through Hao's files and wondered how he's still alive since he's a rookie who cheated death, even in cases where Rui lost some able men. Hao quickly lies through his teeth by saying he was once on the track team in college. Also, since he's very scared of death, he always runs ahead of others and escapes terrible situations. Confused, Rui asks Hao why he joined the army if he was so scared of dying. She then asks him if he has some other objective, and Hao recalls manually searching for Shua for the past 6 months. While he did that, he had been killing and absorbing low-level aberrations. During that time, he had learned to control his beastly transformation, and he had ensured he avoided being seen by humans while visiting every human settlement. Presently, Rui walks to him and lists out his offenses. She then asks him if he knows the consequences, and Hao replies that he's going to be executed. To his surprise, she leans forward and whispers to him about seeing his hands and wondering what was up with them earlier. She asks him why he's been lying and his real objective, but before he can talk, the ground beneath them trembles as if experiencing an earthquake. Hao, who is familiar with such a feeling, leaves his chair and tries running out of the camp. He notes that a horde of aberrations is coming. Rui sees him trying to leave while she's interrogating him, so she grabs his head and smacks him on the floor. One of the soldiers who witnessed her using her prowess, causing the ground to crack beneath them, asks Rui to take it easy. Unfortunately, the cracks worsen and they all collapse into the earth. By the time they wake up, they see they are underground. Hao, whose cuffs snapped due to the environmental conditions, gets up on his feet after learning they fell. As Rui instructs one of them to secure a lighter, the snitch calls Hao bad luck for always attracting trouble. Hao then tells him to complain after they get out. Judging from Hao's tone, the snitch soldier wonders what he means by that, and then learns that there's a high chance they won't make it out of the underground. Moments later, a soldier acquires a lamp and uses it to observe the area. There they are shocked to see they are in a maze dug by aberrations. Rui quickly orders them to calm down, grab their weapons, and stay close while maintaining formation. Suddenly, Hao hears a sound, and he tells the others that he heard a sound from one of the tunnels. The snitch soldier then goes to check it out, and he surprisingly feels a breeze from one of the tunnels. He happily faces the team and praises Hao for his survival instincts, unknown to him that an aberration has crept up behind him and is ready to snack on him. Rui and the others spot it, so she yells at the soldier to duck and then shoots the beetle monster down. As a result, the internal juice, which can melt anything in contact, nearly touches the soldier. He nearly freaks out after courting death twice in that moment. Rui then warns him not to act without her orders. She looks over at Hao, commends his survival instincts, and tells him to spill the beans right after they leave the underground maze. Skeptical, Hao wonders what she's up to since she knows about his abilities but doesn't want to reveal them. The soldiers suddenly hear multiple sounds heading their way, so they take their stance. To their horror, multiple big aberrations pour out of the tunnels and charge right at them. Still stuck underground with Hao, Rui, and the other agents try to shoot down the aberrations, but their numbers seem overwhelming, so they run into a different compartment to take shelter. When they get in, they notice something quite unusual as the swarm stops at the entrance. Not relenting, they advance further into the cave. It only takes them a couple of steps to realize why the aberrations had stopped at the entrance. Standing before them is a huge Dominator-class aberration, which appears to be absorbing red mist from the environment. The aberration then converts the mist it absorbed into a massive energy attack, which it fires at them. Recognizing the attack as something hazardous, Hao warns the entire team to watch out, but it's too late. Rui, however, uses her special sniper to fire a powerful attack at the monster, but neglects her safety in the process. Hao is then forced to transform and block the monster's attack with his mutated hands, shocking everyone in the process. He then tells her not to worry, and that he'll explain everything about himself to her when they make it out alive. Looking at the aberration, the power difference becomes clear as Rui's attack barely has an effect. She then wonders if Hao would really be capable of taking down something that powerful. Going up against the monster, Hao gets the same feeling he got from the aberration that led to his separation from his sickness. Rather than fear, this time around, he wonders how strong he'd become when he takes it down. He charges at it with a special attack combo, but to his surprise, it barely leaves a scratch. Based on the kind of attack he just attempted, if it were a normal beast, it would have been ripped to shreds already. But this one proves to be different. Hao then realizes that for it to be this strong, it must have devoured a couple of other beasts and absorbed their powers. When the monster attacks, its attacks happen to be slow, so Hao can figure out that it must have put all its enchantments into defense. He then decides to use it to his advantage as he prepares stronger attacks. Meanwhile, the rest of the team stares in disbelief as the same guy who they had assumed to be weak turns out to be a powerful mutant. Rui then covers up for him, telling the rest of the team that Hao is an experimental subject secretly developed by the government as a weapon for fighting alien beasts. Not wanting to get in the way, Rui and the others keep their distance as they fire shots at the monster for support. One of the men asks if she knew about Hao all along, and she replies that she only just found out when he transformed in front of them. However, her vice captain senses that she's hiding something, as he has never heard about the government running experiments on humans. Rui goes on to state that Hao had escaped from the laboratory a while back and that she did not expect to see him in Border Patrol. She then makes the soldiers promise not to leak any of the information they just found out, as it's top secret. Meanwhile, Hao miscalculates and dodges one of the monster's energy attacks, which aims straight for the rest of the team. The vice captain then risks his life to protect the rest, but ends up severely injured in his leg. When the other patrol officer asks why he went that far to save him, he responds that he has a motto of never leaving anyone behind, and that even at the cost of his leg, he still doesn't regret it. Hao, on the other hand, is swung across the cave like a Walmart cart with one broken wheel. His mist energy depletes to the point where he can barely maintain a single arm transformation. While the monster charges at him, he just lies there, wondering if this really is the end. In one of the tunnels, Hao gets thrown off by the Dominator aberration, and as it tries stabbing him with its sharp foot, Rui shoots the creature, causing it to miss. Hao is surprised, but she reminds him that he can't die since he has a lot of explaining to do. The creature starts laughing, and the wound caused by Rui's ability gradually closes. They are surprised after witnessing the creature behave like a human. Not only that, but it also sees it draw in and absorb crimson fog from the cave and use it to heal itself. Realizing that it'll soon recover, Rui advises Hao to retreat with them. But to her utmost surprise, she sees his hands have morphed again, and he insists the creature must die that day. Hao's excuse is that the aberration had summoned the mist to heal itself, but unknown to it, it had powered him up. And now that it is immobile, it's the best chance for them to strike. After hearing him out, Rui tells him that their failure could lead to their death. But Hao replies that he has wandered the gates of hell so many times, and doing that once more won't matter. With that, she cocks her gun and tells him they have one shot at this. Rui plans to unleash all of her power to blast open the aberration's head armor, and she wants Hao to follow up by destroying the aberration's brain. Rui immediately crouches and snipes the monster's closing wound while yelling at Hao to attack. He immediately leaps at it and attacks the skull endlessly, cracking it and landing lethal damage to the brain. After witnessing the gruesome act, Rui wonders if they have succeeded, and the next thing she sees is an explosion that throws Hao off. She quickly rushes to him and spots a picture in his pocket, so she takes it and examines it. During that time, the crystal Hao held gets absorbed into his body, and he goes into a trance-like state where he sees his DNA. At first, he thinks he has been completely beastified, but then he sees a flash of light and realizes he can move his body. In his chest lay the crystal he took from the aberration earlier. While observing the crystal, he sees that it not only absorbs red mist, but also stores it inside. Hao celebrates as he continues absorbing the energy without worries, but unfortunately he realizes that the crystal has limits, so he tries to get rid of a lot of energy by recreating the giant beetle's attack. He gathers the mist and compresses it, only for him to wake up in the hospital and point it out of the door. Coincidentally, Rui enters the room and sees him fire the mist ball her way. Out of desperation, she asks him what he's doing, but he yells at her to get out of the way. Upon contact with the building, the mist ball explodes. 5 minutes earlier, while Hao is still receiving extensive treatment at the hospital, Rui decides to visit him. At first, she pays a visit to her vice captain, who is also receiving treatment at the same recovery. When she gets there, he asks questions about who Hao really is, as he has never heard of the government having test subjects. Rui simply responds that Hao's case is top secret and that she'd advise that he focus on his recovery rather than bothering himself with trivial matters. While she turns around to leave, she tells him she has already requested a transfer for him to the logistics department at the headquarters so he can get some proper rest. The vice captain threatens to report the incident with Hao to her father, who happens to be the chief of staff, triggering Rui in the process. She then switches up immediately and freezes his communication privileges, ordering him not to go anywhere. When she leaves, she makes the other patrol officer take her to Hao's ward. When they get to the entrance, she instructs the officer to stand guard at the entrance while she proceeds to enter. The moment she opens the door, she is beyond flabbergasted to see Hao conjuring an energy attack aimed straight at her. Upon seeing her, Hao gets completely flustered as he releases the attack. Luckily, Rui can dodge it just in time, but the attack still ends up leaving a massive hole, not only in the hospital walls, but in the next 3 buildings as well. The vice captain notices the destruction from his ward, so he knows Hao must have been the one responsible. He then wonders how long Rui will be able to keep his identity secret. Rui, recognizing the attack as the same one the aberration they defeated earlier used against them, tells Hao to get ready to answer her questions. They head to the rooftop, where he explains the whole situation to her. She's beyond surprised to learn that not only can he absorb aberration's beast cores, but he can learn their abilities as well. Hao also tells her about the fact that he now possesses the ability to possess and store crimson fog and automatically repair his crystal. Learning about his abilities, Rui seems impressed, but Hao is the one bothered. He worried that although he's getting tremendously stronger now, he might slowly transform into an aberration at the end of the day. He asks the captain if she would still consider someone like him as a human, and she simply responds that he's a one-of-a-kind person. She also states that it is only what he chooses to do with his power that determines if he's going to be a human or a monster. She then gets all serious and presents him with two options as his only way forward from this point. She tells him that it's either he joins her squad as a reserve soldier or he gets classified as a threat and eliminated like the other aberrations. Hao finds it funny because it's obvious that none of the troops in the city would be strong enough to take him down. Rui then calls out his naivety, bringing to his notice that there are far stronger people than he can imagine in the SU government and that he shouldn't get ahead of himself. While she still tries to recruit him by pointing out the benefits he'd get for joining her squad, Hao can't help but feel she has a secret objective. When he points it out, she admits to it, but assures him that she's not his enemy. Hao still seems adamant about joining since he doesn't understand what her agenda could be. Lastly, she shows him a picture she had retrieved from his pocket after he passed out from the fight. She then promises that if he joins her squad, she will use all the resources at their disposal to help him find his little sister. At this point, Hao really begins to reconsider. He knows that there is a limit to what he can do on his own, but with the government's backing, he'll definitely be able to investigate more places. He then finally agrees to join her squad but requests a pay raise first. Given how much she wants him on board, Rui agrees as she officially declares him a Blazing Blood Reserve soldier, with maximum salary and free benefits. She then orders him to go and handle the paperwork at the patrol team. While he turns to leave, she tells him about the damage he caused to the hospital, which she paid for. Apparently, she has decided that she will deduct it from his salary. She then thinks to herself that she must find a way to save her uncle. She believes Hao might hold the key to turning an aberration back into a human. Upon arriving at Chishi City, the patrol team, garrison building, Hao is surprised to see Snitch tagging along with him. Snitch then tells him that Rui and Lin think highly of him, and even though he's in the logistics department, they can look out for each other. Hao stares at Snitch and tries recalling his actual name, but then realizes that he never once paid him any attention. Snitch then spots their former captain, Jia, and he calls out to him. Upon hearing Jia, Hao turns around and sees Jia surrounded by multiple men. Among them, their leader, Zhang Shi, the city defense captain, talks down on Jia, reminding Jia how he once slapped him for a mute woman's sake. Zhang suddenly kicks Jia and compares him to a stray dog, now that he's powerless. Surprised and annoyed by the turn of events, Snitch dashes straight for Zhang, but he gets caught and pinned by Zhang's men. As he yells at Zhang to let go of Jia, Zhang tells Jia to lick the mud off his shoes or else he'll break Snitch's arm. Left with no choice, Jia drops low to do Zhang's bidding, but to everyone's surprise, Hao shows up out of nowhere and stops him. He smiles at Jia and thanks him for his help so far and says it's his turn to repay him. With that, Hao yells at the city defense officers, warning them to steer clear of Jia, else he'll break their bones like biscuits. They immediately get pissed and charge at him with weapons, but he takes them out in 4 seconds. The other city guards start yelling behind their captain, gassing him up that he's an E-rank warrior who'll beat Hao up. Zhang, on the other hand, is surprised by Hao's speed, so he pulls out a gun and shoots Hao multiple times, but Hao dodges the bullets. He then grabs the gun from Zhang and crushes it in a single squeeze while commenting on how slow Zhang fires his gun. He says Zhang isn't even up to a percent of Rui's shooting speed. Zhang gets pissed and tries to melee Hao with a knife, but Hao stops Zhang's hand midway and raises him by the throat. Hao replays how Zhang wanted Jia to kneel, so he smacks the knife away and silences the big guy by slamming him on the ground. The rest of the defense guards realize that fighting Hao isn't a walk in the park, so they scram. After they leave, Hao picks up Jia's crutch and gives it to him while Snitch praises him. Jia thanks Hao, but Hao tells him he's only repaying his kindness. Worried, Jia asks Hao what Hao will do when the city defense team comes looking for him, but Snitch tells him not to worry because he and Hao are now members of the Special Response Unit. Later that evening at the Special Response Unit temporary base, after Rui confirms Hao has done all the paperwork, she shows him that she has already sent his application to join the team, and the headquarters has approved the application. He gets excited and asks her if he's officially a member of the team, but she tells him not to be hasty and to prepare for the real test that is to come. She explains that he must depart for the headquarters in Hucheng to participate in the entry assessment for Blazing Blood. Rui then tells him she believes passing shouldn't be a problem with his level of strength. Hao then heads out, intending to set a new passing record. On the way to Hucheng, where the headquarters of the Blazing Blood are, Rui briefs Hao about the ranking and assessment process. Hao is quite surprised that the other patrol team officer is being allowed to join the Blazing Blood when he's clearly not physically qualified. Rui then points out that since he'll be joining the logistics team, his physical abilities don't really count. She explains to Hao that people like him, who can use special abilities, are referred to as warriors. The ranks of the warriors, however, range from ranks SE. Meanwhile, aberrations can also be classified from weakest to strongest as Scout class, Hound class, Overlord class, Behemoth class, and Calamity class. Based on the power hierarchy, an E-rank warrior should naturally be able to take down a Scout class aberration. Similarly, a D-rank warrior is fit enough to handle a Hound class aberration. Following that same order, B and C-rank warriors would be on par with an Overlord class aberration. Then finally, A and S rank warriors are equal to the Behemoth and Calamity classes aberrations respectively. Rui tells Hao what she knows about Beast Core affinities, pointing out that only aberrations that mutated from the Crimson Fog possess special abilities. Similarly, human warriors attain special abilities by attending to an aberration's Beast Core through Beast Core armament. Even with that, one's physical abilities still determine the quality of the affinity because if a Beast Core isn't attuned, the highest rank that can be attained is E rank. On their way, Rui notices a big shot group heading equally to the headquarters, so she concludes that something is definitely not right. 1 hour later at the venue, the participants are lined up and addressed by Lin, a superior and an A-rank warrior. Lin does the necessary introduction and makes it clear that their backgrounds do not matter and that as long as they're at the blazing blood, pulling strings will not be tolerated. After the necessary introduction, the participants are put in a physical assessment test. Starting with a 50 kilograms weighted 100-meter dash, Hao surpasses all the other contestants as he proves his speed and stamina. Next, they are made to each lift a 500 kilograms electromagnetic force-weighted dumbbell. While the rest of the participants struggle for their lives, Hao lifts it casually with a single hand, surprising them completely. As for the third assessment, the participants are made to punch a power testing machine to estimate their strengths. When it gets to Hao's turn, he accidentally destroys the machine with a light punch. At the end of the assessment, when Lin announces the final scores, everyone is shocked to learn that Hao scored 198 points, breaking the previous record by almost 50 points. While the rest of the participants bask in awe, a shady-looking man named Zhang Jin questions Lin if the scores are truly accurate. Lin asks if he's trying to insult his supervision, so Jin takes it back immediately. However, he confronts Hao and greets him in a dubious way that makes it clear that he has another agenda. Turns out Jin is the younger brother of the leader of the Qixi defense team, whom Hao humiliated the other day, and he has come seeking revenge. Resuming his duty, Lin announces the rest of the results, and there happen to be a couple of other promising participants among the candidates. As a result of his outstanding performance, Hao ends up catching the eye of some other present superiors. While the rest of the candidates are sent back home, the top 15 are urged to get ready for the next test, the Beast Core Affinity. In the dorm room, Jin gets mad for not placing first in the physical training exams. He speaks to two important people on his computer, and they remind him that it's thanks to his brother for being Greenvine's lapdog that he's able to qualify for the assessment. They warn him not to screw up the one chance they've given him. Annoyed and determined, Jin vows to get into blazing blood for his brother's sake. Later, during Beast Core testing station, the qualifiers assemble, and the examiner tells them how it works. They are to insert a Beast Core into the wrist guard they are given, and their score affinity will be read. Any candidate who scores below 40% will be eliminated from the race. To clarify, the instructor tells them that Beast Cores are only produced by Hound class aberrations or higher, and the stronger the aberrations, the higher the quality of the Beast Core. Also, everyone has a different affinity for Beast Cores, and they can activate either elemental, power, or support control. Now, the wrist guard he'll be handing them is the lowest grade, which is only used to test their affinities. Once they get into the combat division, they'll be handed better Beast Cores and aberration armaments. With that, he commences the test, and the participants measure their affinities. Some of them fail, while some score above 40%. One of the candidates who failed at it cried out in frustration because he ranked 5th in physical fitness. When it's Jin's turn, he cockily walks to the stage and inserts the Beast Core while yelling at it to obey him. He is immediately ranked D-class and scores an affinity rate of 60%. This shocks all the other participants because John scored higher than the previous year's strongest rookie, who only had 56%. Realizing that he is above them, Jin cockily declares himself as the strongest. As he returns to his place, Ying chats with Hao and learns he's from Qixi City. She curiously asks him why she's never heard of him before. To clear the air, Ying tells him she's the girl who works at the Technical Intelligence Bureau, and she's impressed he managed to stay under her radar. As she praises him, she asks him if he was the cause of the abnormal concentration of the Crimson Fog in Qixi City a few days ago, but Hao denies it. She reads him like a book and tells him he's fine if he doesn't want to confess, but she's very interested in him. After hearing her out, he asks Ying if he can ask her for some information, and she accepts, but on the condition that his test score must be higher than hers. Right after her deal, she's called to have her affinity examined. Ying jovially runs to the stage and tells everyone to watch her as she breaks Jin's record. While Hao wonders if she's that strong, Jin calls her a pathetic clown. Ying then picks the stone, spins it, and inserts it into the guard while telling the crowd to watch her. Her result appears, and she's classified as a D ranker with an affinity score of 78%. Everybody freaks out upon seeing her score, and some of them claim they know her, calling her Xing Li. After happily showing off, Ying returns to join them. She boasts about shattering Jin's score as stated earlier, and it pisses Jin off, who didn't want to lose to anyone. The last candidate, Yan Hao, is called upon to examine his affinity, and as he walks towards the podium, he admits that Ying is very strong and concludes she might know a lot, as she had claimed earlier. She asks him if he's feeling the pressure, but he tells her to watch him. Determined to get a clue regarding Xue's whereabouts, Hao vows to win the bet. He picks up the beast core, noting its blackness like the rest he's absorbed before, and then recalls Rui saying he should be at least C rank. Hao then inserts the core into his guard and wonders what his score will be. As he anticipates his potential, his rank appears, and he's graded rank C as expected. But the other examiners are surprised since that's the level of a squad leader. When the system tries to read his affinity, it blares out an error message. The message keeps echoing till it finally displays 0%, a very anticlimactic result. Still in the examination room, Jin makes fun of Hao, calling him a loser for having a 0% affinity score. All of a sudden, Hao starts to feel strange as his body begins to subconsciously absorb the beast core. For some weird reason, Ying gets even more impressed, as the worst record they've ever seen is 1% affinity score. She then documents it immediately, remarking that her father would be equally thrilled to learn about it. Jin notices how the beast core has suddenly gone missing from Hao's hand, so he reports to Lin, telling him that Hao has stolen it. Lin then immediately inspects the wrist guard and confirms it to be true. When Lin asks about it, Hao claims not to be aware of what happened as well. At this point, he realizes that he has to come up with something quickly so he doesn't end up as a lab rat. He then decides to take a gamble and try to pass the whole situation as a beastification ability from the beast core. He transforms his left hand using the energy he had absorbed from the beast core, putting the whole room in pandemonium. While Lin and the rest panic and prepare to take him down, Ying just stares in awe and calls out to him to confirm if he's still conscious. As expected, Hao responds calmly while he reverts his hand. He then explains that it must have been an ability from the beast core, as it suddenly burrowed on its own. Everyone present is shocked to see that not only did Hao not go berserk after the transformation, but he also reverts easily. Even Lin congratulates him, telling him his ability is one of a kind. In the midst of the glazing, Hao asks Ying who she is and how she knows what she knows, but while she tries to farm aura with a mysterious response, Lin intercepts. While Ying sulks, Lin tells Hao that Ying is a senior researcher at the Technical Intelligence Bureau. She also happens to be the daughter of Major General Jin Ancheng, the head of the Tech R&D department. Hao is completely surprised by her status. When Lin asks Hao to hand over the beast core, he explains that the whole thing has latched onto his body, making it practically impossible to get it out. Meanwhile, Jin decides that he has to report the whole issue to the people at Greenvine, as he believes that Hao would make a perfect test subject for their experiments. Later that day, Hao is taken to the radiology room where his body is being examined by General Ancheng, Ying's father, and some other scientists. From their scans, they realize that the beast core cannot be separated, as it has completely fused with his body. Examining Hao's body, Ancheng can't help but assume that he has a lot of secrets he's still hiding. Shortly after, Lin arrives with Song Lian, the chief of the General Staff, Special Response Unit. When they arrive, Ancheng asks if they still want to stick to their 40% affinity acceptance rule. When they ask what he means, he reveals that their machine had gone off the charts. Apparently, what was displayed was simply an error, as Hao's affinity score had surpassed the theoretical maximum they set on the machine. Upon hearing this, Song's face brightens immediately. Meanwhile, from where he's being examined, Hao ponders to himself about how the crystal core in him is slowly turning from black to red. He figures out that it must have been as a result of the beast core he absorbed. Based on the events of things happening, Hao then confirms that the stronger the aberration, the stronger he'll become by absorbing them. Better yet, as long as he keeps plundering aberrations, he will continue to evolve infinitely. At the Special Response Unit in the Blazing Blood headquarters, Rui argues with her father for not letting Hao join her squad. She reminds him that she is the reason he joined Blazing Blood. Her father then warns her about her tone and asks her why she's so concerned about Hao. In response, Rui tells him she made a promise to get him on her team when he joins, and she reminds him that a soldier mustn't break their word. The strict old man tells her that a soldier's promise is to their country, not an individual. He says Hao has been assigned to Yongshin's team, and it can't be changed. Before ordering Rui to go back to her post, the old man asks her about her position and if she's going to fight Yongshin over a recruit. Left with no choice, Rui backs down, but she plans to figure out another way to get Hao. Elsewhere at the barracks lounge, Ying shows up with news and informs Hao that they are sending rookies to the recently discovered beast nest between Chishi and Hucheng City. She admits that she has gotten permission from their instructor to team up. After hearing her out, they later meet with Lin, who informs them that they are to investigate and assess the threat levels. They are to be careful because if the Crimson Fog shows up, things can become unpredictable. Ying assures Hao that it'll be alright because she'll watch his back. After the briefing, they set out for the beast nest's location. On the way, Ying informs Hao and Snitch that there are 4 threat levels of beast nests, ranging from low to extreme, and the one they are headed to is a low-level threat. Ying says it's a hive type that has a complex network of internal tunnels, and the deadliest part is the stinger bees. The bees are poisonous, and within them, there are also soldier bees. After being briefed, Hao wonders why 3 truckloads of people are tasked to take care of a hornet's nest when a person should be enough. Ying tries to clarify, but they notice a huge swarm of bees heading their way. Upon seeing the bees getting closer, Hao is surprised at how huge they are. Ying then tells him that the bees aren't honeybees like he had thought, but Scout-class iron bees. Snitch immediately tries to lose their trail, so he tells everyone to hold on tight. Suddenly, they see a horde of thick needles shot their way, and they are horrified. Ying even admits that their armored car can't withstand the sting attacks from the iron bees. Left with no choice, Hao tells them he'll handle the situation. While noting it's the best chance to try out his new ability, he coats the car door with his red armor and then rips it apart, using it as a shield for his hands. After jumping out to confront the bees, Hao tells the others to find cover while he takes on the aberrations. He immediately starts attacking the swarm, and the others drive off to a safer location. While at it, Ying tells Snitch, who is surprised to see Hao's ability, that Hao has a transformation ability. She tells him how Hao had absorbed the beast core and showcased the ability during the test, but she didn't know he could also morph objects. After realizing Hao can turn anything into a weapon, Ying gets excited and declares she'll study Hao as soon as they get back. Suddenly, a green needle flies at Hao and it goes through his armor. He looks at the poison needle and notes it is more powerful than the iron bee's stingers. Hao, who doesn't know where the attack is coming from, tells the others to be careful and to hide behind a rock. One of the scouts takes a flamethrower and runs towards the bees, saying that bees are scared of fire. Ying and Snitch try to warn him to stop, but a powerful green stinger hits his flamethrower gas, and it explodes, and he's burnt alive. While swatting away the soldier bees, Hao asks Ying about the powerful stingers and who is firing them. She says it's an attack from a hound-class queen whose tail stinger has a venom that can corrode any armor below C grade. That's when Ying realizes they are up against a hound class, which is far above the intel they were given. She freaks out after learning their initial intel is wrong, and they are up against a more serious threat. Hao then calls out to clear a path for him to fight the queen bee. Still hiding behind the rock, Ying powers up and fires Storm, a wind attack at the soldier bees. The attack blows them away and leaves the path to the queen open, so Hao charges right at it. The wind attack also blows away the crimson fog around the queen. Then Hao takes the transformed door shield he made earlier and morphs it into a huge spear. With that, he takes a stance and throws it at the queen. Still deep in the woods, Hao lunges his newly converged weapon at the queen bee, and it hits her in a vital spot. But despite taking such an attack, the bee remains completely unfazed to their shock. While the wasp tries to escape, Ying realizes that something is off. She immediately instructs Hao not to let it get away, as the hound-class bee is slowly developing into an overlord-class aberration. But it's pointless. Hao has drained up his crimson fog reserve, and with no source to draw from, all he can do is lie there and watch the monster get away. While he lies there, Ying teases him about resuscitating him with mouth-to-mouth, but he makes it clear to her that he's not like P. Diddy, who is into little girls. Shortly after, the team decides to report the situation to the headquarters. After sending a message to HQ, Ying scans the area with one of her devices and confirms that the crimson fog concentration in the nest is low. With that confirmed, she tells Hao that they should be able to go in with protective suits. Hao seems against the idea, as he believes they should wait for backup, but Ying convinces him otherwise. According to her logic, the monster is already injured, so they'll have a better chance of finishing it off before it gets to replenish itself. Also, by defeating the queen bee, they'll have completed a mission above their ranks, meaning more rewards. Meanwhile, at the headquarters, Song is seen discussing with Lin about how important Hao is to the... He points out that other factions, as well as a group of mad scientists, have shown interest in his abilities and are eager to develop him into a high-tier asset. He then instructs Lin to keep an eye on him so they don't end up losing someone as special as him. Almost immediately after their discussion, the energy transmission Hao's team sent comes in. When they learn about the situation, Song, who also suspects that something is fishy, orders Lin to dispatch Rui's unit to back them up. The priority is to ensure the safety of Hao and Ying, as well as to annihilate the beast. They then shortly get interrupted by Young Ji, Rui's vice captain, and Lin's younger brother, who has just been discharged from the hospital. Although Lin is surprised to see that he has been discharged already, Song orders him to report to Rui's side and serve as her adjutant for the mission once more. As the only members with the protective combat suits, Hao and Ying advance towards the nest while the other team members stay behind. When they get to the entrance, Ying confirms with her scanning device that the energy readings haven't changed much, but she remarks that if the queen bee evolves fully, then things might get ugly for them. Suddenly, the queen bee storms out of the nest, and unfortunately for them, it has undergone the full transformation already. This time around, it has become a mutated iron-armored poison stinger queen. To make matters worse, a good number of the other stinger bees have somehow gotten stronger as well. At that same moment, the crimson fog concentration in the area becomes extremely high, and it starts to affect Ying seriously. She wonders why her device had failed to pick up something like that earlier, and why the resistance level of their suits is suddenly lower. It then dawns on them that there's probably a mole in the blazing blood who has intentionally tampered with them. While Ying grows weaker from the effect of the crimson fog, Hao uses it to replenish himself. The bees start to attack, so Hao is forced to take Ying to a safe distance so she doesn't get in his way. He finds a perfect, well-ventilated spot where he decides to hide her. He then instructs her to contact HQ and tell the reinforcements to bring proper protective suits for them, as he turns to head back. Before he leaves, Ying makes him promise to come back alive as she would haunt him down to hell otherwise, and he agrees. Confronting the queen, Hao makes up his mind that this time around, he's going to do everything in his power to protect his loved ones. He then decides to go all out as he absorbs some crimson fog and uses it to prepare a massive energy attack, which he aims at the mutated beast. Still in the cave and surrounded by the bees, Hao replicates the boss beetle's energy cannon while noting that he only has the energy for one shot. He condenses the energy ball, points it at them, and detonates it. The massive attack hits the bees squarely on the face and then breaks through the nest. While waiting for the dust to clear out, Hao hopes the attack had worked, but then he discovers none of the bees were affected by the energy blast, and he is shocked at the outcome. 3 minutes earlier, Ying had disassembled the crimson fog measuring device and configured it properly to work well. After screwing it properly, the device alerted her of how dangerous the area was, concentrated with crimson fog, and they had exceeded their limits. Surprised and scared to see the device reading twice the threshold limits, Ying wondered how. She suddenly heard a loud explosion, so she went outside to check it out. Upon seeing the result, Ying notes that the explosion must have stirred the fog concentration, making it denser. She realizes all the low-class bees have evolved into hound classes. Hao, on the other hand, gets a dose of the crimson fog. So he transforms his hands into a shield and then fights defensively. The fight drags on, and Hao complains internally of running out of energy faster than he can recover using the crimson fog. Ying sees him and gets worried after seeing the red veins in his neck. She suspects his suits must also have been tampered with. After noticing the fog readings are still going through the roof, Ying creates a ball of wind and throws it at Hao to help him disperse the crimson fog around him. When the ball gets close to Hao, she detonates it like a bomb, and it clears the fog around him. Startled, Hao wonders who could have thrown such an attack because he has now been stripped of his source of power. The bees then fire their stingers at him, so he tries blocking the attacks with his transformed hand. Unfortunately, the stingers penetrate his armor, and he is then paralyzed by the poison in them. Suddenly, he senses an attack shot at him from behind, but because of the paralysis effect, Hao realizes he can't react in time to it. Out of nowhere, Young Jilin shows up and tanks it with his armored skin, an innate special ability just like Ying's wind. Hao is surprised to see him, so he calls out to Lin, but Lin tells him to concentrate because the fight isn't over. The bees swarm them and prepare for another round of attacks, but they are suddenly shot down by purple beams. Hao traces the line of fire and spots Rui, so he asks her what she's doing there. Rui then tells him she's on orders from headquarters to provide support. In one word, she orders her men to clear out the bees, and they charge in with their weapons. Joining Hao in the nest, Rui's team members render effective support by suppressing the passageway with fire and burning some of the bees. Hao and Youngji are then ordered to fall back and regroup immediately. While they fall back, the queen bee, which happened to survive Hao's earlier attack, fires a massive stinger at them from a distance, taking everyone by surprise. Seeing the attack, other team members try to warn them to look out, but Rui tells them not to worry and to keep running. She then locks in instantly and decides to use a special attack she has been saving for last. Electromagnetic Annihilation. It's an attack that creates a high-voltage electric field that destroys and paralyzes everything within its range. The effect of the attack is so powerful that it destroys the stinger and hits the queen bee directly. While the queen tries to escape, Rui tells everyone that it can't get far as it has been paralyzed already. She tells her men to focus on wiping out the surrounding swarm to prioritize the rescue. Hao, meanwhile, is still quite surprised that Rui possesses such a powerful ability. Youngji then tells him that the last time they got trapped underground, she didn't have her main combat gear, and that's why she couldn't fight with her full strength. While Rui's men rescue Ying from where she was, Hao quietly uses the opportunity to sneak away to replenish his crimson fog energy. He knows that his last cannon energy blast wasn't enough to defeat the queen, but he's still determined to keep trying. After managing to fill up his reserves, he notices the whole space going into a commotion. Turning around, he's then shocked to see that the queen has also decided to absorb all the remaining crimson fog in the nest, despite being weak. It doesn't take them long to realize that it's starting to evolve into a higher class again. Based on the amount of crimson fog that gets summoned, Ying's device begins to go crazy. She then realizes that the nest is no ordinary nest, but a high-level one. A large swarm of hound-class bees suddenly appears from behind, driving the whole team into a panic. Hao then instructs the rest to handle the swarm, while he decides to take on the boss by himself. Charging at it with full speed, Hao uses a series of rapid attacks on the creature, but its tough skin seems impenetrable. He's then forced to attempt another condensation blast attack in close combat. At first, it looks like the attack finishes it off, and Hao already starts jubilating, but he realizes it, and the queen fires a massive stinger at him, which he only barely manages to dodge. He then realizes that blasting it with energy will not be enough to deal a fatal blow, and for that reason, he'll need a suitable weapon. Luckily for him, he finds the stinger the queen fired and decides to take a different approach. Picking it up, Hao uses his materialization entwine ability and converts it into a powerful-looking weapon. He then uses it to charge at the queen bee, which fires another series of deadly stingers at him. After evading the stingers, Hao infuses the weapon with all the crimson energy left in his body and uses it to deliver a fatal strike. This time around, the queen doesn't survive it. After taking down the queen, Hao receives its Overlord-class Beast Core, which infuses with his body and grants him energy so powerful that it makes him pass out. Meanwhile, the rest of the bees suddenly get weak, so the team defeats them easily. They then panic as they notice Hao lying lifeless on the floor. At the beast nest, after absorbing the Beast Core, Hao passes out, and when they spot him, Ying checks his heart rate and neural signs and discovers it's in complete disarray. Ying believes Hao has been exposed to too much of the crimson fog that he might lose his sanity. Upon hearing Hao's medical condition, Rui orders Lin to use the medical mobile pod on Hao to block his neural transmission. He obeys, and they temporarily set up camp outside the beast nest. There, Hao is placed in the pod, and they brief Snitch on Hao's condition. Rui then places Ying in charge of monitoring and stabilizing the pod's parameters. As soon as the pod is activated, it injects Hao with anesthesia. Then Ying reminds Rui that it's only a temporary treatment because they'll need to get Hao to the headquarters as soon as possible. Meanwhile, in Hao's mindscape, he wrestles with an alter ego that wants him to accept beastification. The alter ego easily overpowers him and tries to impose its will on him. As Hao has flashbacks and wonders if he's going to die, the alter ego slams him on the ground. Suddenly, Hao sees his parents telling him to live on and take care of his sister. He then recalls Shi asking him to promise her to return safely. Not only her, but his comrades also show up in his vision, telling him to wake up and not give up. Determined and fueled with words of encouragement, Hao realizes that everyone is waiting for him, so he steels his resolve to live and remembers he has to find Shui. The will to live to protect everyone grows so strong that it literally binds his alter ego in chains. This time around, he gets up and tells the ego it isn't just his own responsibility, but theirs. With that, the ego is stripped of the beast energy, and Hao absorbs it into his body. While at it, Hao's inner core changes shape, and he sees how burdensome getting stronger is. After completing the process, he tries waking up, but then wonders why he can't do that or move his body either. During that time, the soldiers encounter a heavy sandstorm, so Lin advises the rest to stay at an old ruin 3 kilometers away. Rui first asks to confirm Hao's condition, and once she learns he's stable although still unconscious, she agrees with Lin's plan. They drive to the old ruin, and upon getting there, they disembark to rest until the storm is over. Not lowering her guard, Rui feels as if they are being watched, so she orders Ying to scan the area for crimson fog concentration and heat signatures. She then orders her men to protect Hao, reminding them that it is the top priority order from the headquarters. Unknown to them that they are being watched by a group of scavengers, the soldiers have their backs completely unguarded. The scavengers then attack the soldiers with crossbows laced with venom from wasps. Thankfully, Lin sees it on time and orders them to take cover. As if that wasn't enough, the scavengers drop an enormous boulder at them, so Rui kicks Hao's pod to safety before shattering and evading the debris. Lin then hardens his body and protects Ying, who screams out of fear from the debris effect. This time around, the scavengers show their faces, and they are ordered to defeat and loot the soldiers. They throw bottles that contain paralyzing liquid of a Dominator-class beast at the soldiers before charging at them. A macho dude tries attacking Rui, believing she's a weak little girl, but she sends him crashing with an amped kick. That's when she notices the scavengers have thrown a hook at the pod. As they drag it away, Rui tries going after them, but her body falls due to the paralysis effect from the bottles. The scavengers believe the pod must be a treasure since they watched the soldiers protect it earlier. Even Ying tries going after it, but she's shot in the foot with an arrow. Despite the immense pain she's feeling, she yells Hao's name and watches in disbelief as the scavengers carry the pod away. A while after Hao's capture from the ruins, Rui and the rest regain consciousness from the paralyzing poison. While Rui patches up Ying's injury, she blames herself seriously, calling herself an incompetent leader as she couldn't complete a simple objective. Given the perfect execution of events, Ying is convinced that they were set up, as raiders already knew their movements beforehand. Since there's still a severe sandstorm outside, Rui knows that the raiders couldn't have moved above ground. After searching the building, the team finds an abandoned elevator shaft, which seems like the entrance to a hideout. Rui then immediately splits up the team. She orders some team members to secure the exit and protect Ying, while she orders the rest to come with her. Snitch, who happened to have been placed on the other team, insists on coming along, but Rui declines his request as he's not a combatant type. He then begins an emotional pep talk about how he can't just sit tight when his alleged best friend is in danger, so Rui is forced to take him along. Meanwhile, at the raiders' hideout, they wonder what could be inside the box to make it so heavy. When they try to open it, they lose a good number of their weapons, as the box proves to be impenetrable. A little kid then steps forward stating that he can open the box, but they'd have to go underground first. The rest of the raiders mock the kid as what lies below is a dead end. Even the leader comments that it's far too dangerous underground for the likes of them to survive. But the boy keeps insisting that there's a key down there. He then makes a bet that if they get there and he's not able to open the box, they can kill him however they like. Otherwise, they should let him go. The raiders are then forced to agree to his demands. Hao, however, who has been conscious the whole time, is able to figure out that he has been taken to an enemy hideout. After his crystal core was upgraded, his sensory abilities have been enhanced as well. Now he had not only gained awareness of things going on in his environment, but the state of his body, as well as the exact level of his stats and crimson energy reserve. He had also gained a special poison gland ability from the queen, which seems quite intriguing to him. While some of the raiders stay behind, the rest, led by the little kid, take the box underground in search of the key. When they get there, the kid points at a piece from a dead aberration skeleton and tells them it will help them open the box. Suddenly, the box opens on its own, and the men are shocked to see a person emerge from it. Hao, who had been waiting for the perfect opportunity to test his new skill, uses the poison gland effect on some of the raiders, and it proves to be effective. The leader assumes Hao had intentionally let himself get captured just to infiltrate their base. He then starts bluffing, yapping about how he used to be a D-rank warrior and that killing Hao shouldn't be much of a problem for him. He charges at Hao with a skeletal piece from the aberration, but Hao takes him down easily with a single punch. He then glares at the little kid, who passes out immediately from terror. Based on the cluster of aberration skeletons in the area and the kind of damage done to them, Hao can figure out that they didn't die of natural causes. Someone must have deliberately gathered them in the pit and made them fight each other to the death. After a short while, as a result of his advanced senses, Hao can pick up Rui's electromagnetic signals from above. He then remarks that she's as impatient as ever. Meanwhile, at the hideout, Rui and the rest of the team take down all the raiders, but still can't find any traces of Hao. As soon as they start to worry, Hao jumps out of the huge hole in the center of the room, carrying the little kid. After Hao casually steps out of the hole while carrying the blonde kid who passed out earlier, Rui and the others ask him what's down there, and he tells them it looks like an abandoned beast fighting arena. Lin wonders if they are to investigate, but Rui tells them their top priority is to return to the headquarters, and they can send a team to do that later. Snitch then asks Hao who the kid is he's carrying, and to their surprise, the boy leaps off Hao and tries stabbing him with a knife. Unfortunately for him, Hao covers the spot with scale armor and then shatters his blade. He asks the brat if he has a death wish, but the boy gasps for air while holding his throat and calls the soldiers bastards. The soldiers see the boy's dark corneas and red markings around his face and conclude he suffers from crimson fog infection. Hao knocks him out, and Snitch sees a fallen ID. He picks it up and learns it belongs to Ship, his comrade in the patrol unit back at Shishi. He shows the photo to Rui, and she suspects the person in the photo is the boy's older brother. Snitch then carries the boy based on Rui's orders to take him to the headquarters for treatment and questioning. As they walk back to the car, Hao tries absorbing the crimson fog energy in the brat, believing it can slow the boy's infection process and save him. After a while, as the squad arrives at the headquarters barracks in Hucheng, a soldier informs Jin about it. Rui, on the other hand, instructs Lin to take Ying to the medical bay, but they are surprised when a soldier halts them and tells them they've been asked to undergo immediate quarantine inspection due to returning from a high-risk crimson fog zone. Surprised, Hao asks when the rule got in place, but the soldier on duty tells him it was ordered by their superiors. He asks Hao and the rest to get rid of their clothing and undergo disinfection and examination. Rui then asks the soldier who exactly permitted him. Then she orders him to call the superior over. Shortly afterwards, he shows up with Jin, who didn't expect Rui to be back with Hao and the others. Realizing that his plan has been foiled, Jin tells Rui it's a misunderstanding, saying her squad and Ying, who are veterans and researchers of war, don't need the inspection. But since it's Hao's first time, he should carry out the procedures. Rui immediately interjects that it's not necessary, and she tells Hao to ignore Jin. As they all walk inside, Jin tells them to wait and points to the boy whom Snitch is carrying. He calls the boy a thing, and upon hearing he's related to someone from the patrol team, Jin calls the child garbage and insults the team. Jin then instructs his men to seize the boy, so they point their guns at Snitch and expect him to surrender. This pisses Snitch off, and Rui, who was watching, nearly reacts at Jin, but Hao stops her and tells her to let him handle it. He activates his poison gland and touches Jin on the shoulder, telling him to stop. At first, Jin tries to talk back at him for being defied, but the poison kicks in, and he wonders when Hao has infected him. Hao then talks in a low tone, revealing that he's aware that Jin hates him, but he tells Jin to back off while he can. He then speaks to Jin condescendingly, making fun of Jin for falling to the ground. While Jin struggles to breathe, Hao orders Jin's men to take Jin inside to rest. Jin curses Hao under his breath while watching Hao walk off with the rest. On the way, Rui gets curious and asks him what he did, but he tells her not to worry, and Jin will just be bedridden for a few days. After reporting their mission and Ying getting treated, Ying tells the chief of staff and her father that her combat suit was not only smeared with a slow-acting corrosive agent, but its protective function failed after being exposed to high fog concentration. The chief of staff also concludes there's a mole who didn't want her back. He turns to Hao and tells him he's also one of the targets. Hao corrects his notion by saying he was the primary target while Ying was just caught in the crossfire. The man then instructs Hao that he's been suspended from all field activities until they get to the bottom of the matter. Ying's father, who is the head of research, speaks up on the matter by asking the chief of staff to do a thorough job and get trustworthy people to sniff out the mole. The man agrees and then orders Rui to look after Ying and Hao for the time being. A few days later, Hao rests on a chair outside the office building and thinks about the recent happenings so far. While wondering what to do, Snitch runs to him and tells him he found a photo that resembles his sister on the boy they brought back from the old ruins. Shocked, Hao grabs Snitch's arm and asks again if he's serious. At the Blazing Blood headquarters, Hao and Snitch head to the room where the little kid is undergoing treatment. When they get there, the doctor tells them his condition is far more stable compared to how he was when he first arrived, but they'd still have to keep him under observation. Hao then sends the doctor out so he doesn't witness what he's about to do. When the doctor leaves, he picks up the picture Snitch told him about and confirms the girl in it to be Shay. He then begins interrogating the kid about where he met her. The boy responds that he had only met her at a refugee resettlement center 6 months ago. When Hao asks about her whereabouts, the boy snaps and starts to lose it to the effect of the crimson fog in his body. All the same, he keeps screaming something about all of them being gone, including his brother, who had promised that he'd be back. Hearing those words unlocks a memory in Hao, as he also remembers promising Shua that he'd be back before the whole incident happened. Snitch then cuts in that a man named Shuo was the one assigned to evacuate the refugees back then, but he got assigned to a different mission mid-transfer, which made him disappear. Hao finds it strange enough that an officer had been assigned another mission in the middle of his original one, but Snitch tells him they'll look into the mission files to confirm the details later. To Snitch's surprise, Hao places his hand on the boy and begins to absorb crimson energy from his body. He then tells him to keep it a secret so nobody else finds out about it. After absorbing the energy, the kid reverts to normal. Hao then tells him he'll help him find his brother, as long as he tells him all he knows about the girl in the picture. The boy still seems confused about everything going on, but decides to trust Hao, so he tells him all he knows about Xue. Later that day at the base's cafeteria, Snitch expresses his concerns about Hao going back out there in search of his sister, but he seems to have made up his mind already. Snitch then talks about the fact that there's still a mole in the military, which is the reason Rui ordered him to follow him around and report back to her directly. Hao calmly responds that he joined the military solely for his sister, and even Rui can't stop him from trying to find her. To their surprise, Rui, who has been eavesdropping on them the whole time with Ying, interrupts to say that she never intended to stop him in the first place. The whole team then relocates to a private room where they can discuss more freely. There, Ying reveals surveillance footage from the little kid's hospital room, so Hao realizes that his secret is out of the bag already. Rui cuts in, and the doctor he sent out had reported to her, so she had then made Ying pull out the footage. She then tells Hao that she's not going to stop him, but instead will be coming along with him on the mission. As expected, the others agree to tag along as well. Hao then reveals his plan and strategy to them. Later that day, at the ruins of the outskirts of the Qishi city, Zhang, who has somehow found out about Hao's movement, is seen reporting to a strange man about his current progress. Finding out that Hao is currently on his way to Qishi city, the strange man gets excited and reports it to Chief Hong. A few days later, at the Qishi outskirts checkpoint, a large number of guards hold up the traffic and start inspecting the cars. As a result, Hao, Rui, and Snitch get caught in the traffic. The team had left Ying behind to render virtual support with military equipment from the base. Still in the traffic, Hao teases Rui about the slick car she chose for the mission, and she responds that since it's not an official mission, they have to be more discreet. When the city guards get to their car and are about to inspect it, a large number of Iron Ridge wolf aberrations appear from nowhere and start charging at them. Shocked, the guards take to their heels, leaving the people stuck in the traffic. Hao then decides to step out and take care of the pack. At the city gates, Hao sees the wolf beast chasing after the civilians, so he intervenes by slicing one of them in two. This shocks the bystander who nearly got snacked upon, but Hao tells him to run if he wants to live. Hao sees that the monsters are scout class, and as he watches the monsters charge right at him, he recalls a familiar incident. Back then, it was when he tried running away with Xue. But this time around, Hao says he won't let such happen again. With one attack, he takes down the entire pack of wolves. The City Defense Corps is terrified of his strength and concludes that he must be the one they are looking for. One of them quickly rushes to inform Zhang that Hao has arrived. Meanwhile, Snitch praises Hao on the one-sided beatdown, then Rui says she'll handle the rest. She introduces herself while showing her ID to the city defense officers before ordering them to stop their inspections and let the civilians into the city. The soldiers do as told, and Rui drives in with the rest. On her way to the patrol headquarters, Hao tells her he feels the officers had another motive for the inspections they carried out. She asks him what it was, and he tells her it seems they were looking for someone. He doesn't think too deeply about it because their objective is to look into Shuo's files. On getting to the city defense headquarters, they go through the files but find zero records on Shuo. Rui also finds it suspicious that she can't find him in the database. At that point, Snitch freaks out when he discovers that it's not just Shuo, but a lot of other soldiers, and even the basic roster is missing. Rui also tells them about her findings, and they wonder if it's a dead end. Hao asks if they have any other options, so Rui reaches out to Ying and asks her to look into the case from her end. Ying assures Rui but asks for a little time, and Rui relays the message to the others. They praise Ying for her skills, and while they wait, Snitch has an idea, so he suggests they visit his former captain, Jia. Since Jia mentored Shuo back then when the patrol unit first started, they go to Jia's place and find it messy. After examining the place, they discover that there are fresh marks all over, and there was a struggle in the room. Hao concludes that the city defense team is behind the incident, and it surprises Rui, so she asks why. Snitch then tells her how the team bullied Jia back in the day, but Hao had stepped in and whooped them. As Snitch concludes it's a revenge ploy, Hao realizes he was the one the city defense was after all along, so he declares that they face them head-on. As soon as they leave the apartment, they see 2 city defense corps outside, who tell them they've been looking for them. Rui asks for their identity, and one of them, called Li Ben, the city defense adjutant, introduces himself. He tells them that he just received word of their arrival, and he wants them to help him look for Jia. Rui finds it suspicious because it's none of her team's business, so she asks him why, but Li tells her that the aberrations around the Chishi have been unusually active, so his forces are not enough to stop them. Hao whispers to Rui, and she accepts the mission, but on the condition that Li follows them. Li gets scared and tries backing out, but Rui tells him it's not a request and threatens to have him executed on the spot if he refuses. With that, he gets hushed with them, and they drive to the venue. On the way, Hao asks Li what he meant by the aberrations being prominent as of late. Hao then asks if Li had sent Jia to his death, but Li vehemently denies it and says it was Jia who insisted on going on the mission. After a while, they arrive at the venue and get out of the vehicle. Upon observing the place, Hao feels off and tells Rui about it. He says they were told the place was crawling with aberrations, but none have been spotted so far. Meanwhile, Li fumbles through his phone to get someone to pick him up from the vehicle. As he worries about the current situation, Snitch spots him and asks him what he's up to, but Li brushes him off and then tries walking away, saying he's leaving the matter in Rui's hands. Thankfully, Rui blocks his path and tells him he'll not be going anywhere. She asks him for his objective, but a thunder sound startles them. A bright lightning strikes close to them, and Li cowers like a girl, screaming he doesn't want to die. Rui and Hao calmly assess the situation and see an Overlord-class Thunder Beast. They realize it's the reason why there aren't any low-level beasts around. At the outskirts of the city, Hao, Rui, and Snitch are shocked to see the massive Overlord-class Thunder Beast. Comparing it to the abnormal activities of the other beasts and the patrol team that suddenly went off the radar, they're able to figure out that it all seems planned. Meanwhile, Adjutant Li, who knew about the whole situation from the start, tries to slip away, but Rui orders Snitch to stop him. While Snitch chases him, ordering him to stop, he responds that he'd be a fool to stop with death staring right into his eyes. All of a sudden, the monster fires a massive breath attack at them, and they only barely manage to evade it. Rui then tells Hao to try to hold it off while she fetches her weapon. Meanwhile, Zhang is seen on a nearby rooftop controlling the monster with some kind of advanced technology. One of his men asks if the technology is enough to take a beast that ferocious, and he simply replies that the technology backing them is way beyond their imaginations. Thanks to the technology, they've built a whole beast-taming facility where they're raising even more powerful beasts. Zhang believes that as long as they can capture Hao and hand him over to the people backing them, the entire city will be his. At the fight scene, Hao figures out that the Thunder Beast is an elemental-type beast that fights using energy, so he believes his poison gland ability would be very effective against it. He charges at it to deliver a poison-coated attack, but for some reason he gets pushed back by the electromagnetic force surrounding the beast. Given that the electromagnetic field forcibly cancelled out his beast form, Hao realizes that it's somewhat similar to Rui's attack. Realizing that the monster is not a normal Overlord-class aberration, Hao is forced to keep his distance. Rui returns shortly with her weapon, so Hao asks if she can do something about the monster's electromagnetic field. She replies that since her beast core comes from the Thunder Beast, she should be able to use all her power to fire an annihilation shell to get rid of the field. But the downside is that the effect would only last for a short period. To Hao, that short period is more than enough. He bolts at the monster and orders her to fire on command. When he gets close enough, he gives the signal, and when Rui takes the shot, as expected, the electromagnetic field cancels out. Hao then uses the opportunity to deliver a fatal poison attack, which penetrates the beast's skin. The poison takes effect immediately, and the monster's movement slows down. Although it keeps trying to attack, Hao now has the upper hand, so he evades its attacks easily. He then retaliates, causing the monster rapid pain. Hao remarks that although the monster's attack power is stronger than the previous Overlord-class beast, its physical strength is way weaker without its lightning, but he's still not satisfied. He knows that without Rui's help, he might not have stood a chance at all, so he decides that he has to get stronger. After receiving enough ass-whooping, the beast tries to retreat, but Hao stops it, telling it should at least leave something behind to compensate for the stress. Rui also makes up her mind that she has to get stronger if she wants to catch up to Hao. Back on the rooftop, Zhang's subordinate panics as they seem to be on the losing side. But Zhang, unbothered, tells him to relax because he has already prepared a surprise. Suddenly, a different Overlord-class beast shows up behind Rui to her surprise. Realizing there's another monster nearby, Hao quickly pushes Rui from harm's way, but he gets caught in the crossfire. Scared after witnessing Hao gobbled up, Rui screams out his name. To her surprise, she sees the monster struggling till its mouth is forced open against its will. Hao stands in between its jaws, while forcibly separating it from closing. He then leaps out of it after yelling at it for thinking it can devour him. Once on the ground, Hao speaks on how they are up against 2 Overlord-class monsters. Rui runs over to Hao to confirm he's okay, and Hao says he didn't expect an aberration that could turn invisible. Rui explains how the monster's ability works and admits it's hard to deal with such when there's no support from the sensory squad unit. Right in front of their eyes, the Butcher Beast vanishes, and as they try guessing its whereabouts, the Thunder Beast fires a lightning attack at them. Surprised that the beast had recovered its lightning abilities so quickly, Hao, who jumps away with Rui, wonders how. Unfortunately for him, he gets jumped by the Butcher Beast and swatted away like a pesky bug. Rui gasps in horror and then retaliates by throwing an electric ball at it. The Butcher Beast immediately suffers from the impact of a very high voltage, so it quickly erases its presence. Hao immediately puts his guard up, noting that it's very hard for him to track the Butcher Beast once it turns invisible. To his surprise, Rui tells him that the last attack she used on the beast can make her sense it through a magnetic field. Upon learning that she can tell, Hao asks her to tell him the beast's location so he can finish it off with one move, and she tells him it's behind him to the left. She tells him as soon as the monster charges straight for him, so Hao surprises it by pinning its mouth wide open and creating the beetle compressed energy ball. He tells the monster to try eating the attack, then he fires it, and it explodes, annihilating the upper part of its face. The carcass lands with a huge thud, and Hao looks at the Thunder Beast, noting that it's the one left. He sees it's protected by lightning energy, so Hao asks if Rui can get rid of the lightning armor like before, but she tells him she doesn't have her gear with her. As the monster attacks them with its lightning cannon, they avoid the attack and think up another strategy. This time around, Rui tells Hao that there's another way to break the armor, and it's by covering him with her remaining lightning. She coats him with lightning, forming an ionized layer around him, and warns him that it can only last for 10 seconds, so he should utilize it well. Once amped with her ability, Hao says he's got more than enough time to handle the monster. He lunges right at it and dodges all the attacks the monster had sent at him. While at it, Hao notes that he can't get hit before getting close to it. As soon as he gets close, he concentrates his power into his right hand and uses his beastification ability on it. He amps it with the lightning ability and makes a huge hole out of the Thunder Beast. This shocks Zhang and his assistant. The duo had taken down 2 Overlord-class beasts. Zhang quickly hurries off, with the plan to have Squad 2 fire off anti-tank missiles at the Blazing Blood members. He doesn't want the members to leave the place alive, and he plans to get in touch with the Green Vine group. Hao, on the other hand, nullifies his beastified arm and says it's over. At the city outskirts, after Hao defeats the aberrations, he retrieves their beast cores. Since Rui played a pivotal role in the fight, Hao considers giving her one of the beast cores as a reward. When he turns around, he is surprised to see her passed out. Snitch, who also arrives at that same moment with the adjutant he managed to capture, is shocked to see the captain lying unconscious on the floor. She had overused her ability, causing her body to be drained completely. Fortunately, it's just physical exhaustion, as there is no crimson fog in the area. At the rooftop, Zhang's men arrive with the anti-tank missiles, and while they try to fire them, they notice Adjutant Li at the scene with their targets. Regardless, Zhang orders them to take the shot. He had simply instructed Li to lure them there, but seeing him at the scene with the target makes it seem like he's asking for death himself. When the men fire the missiles, to their surprise, none of the shots hit the target. Realizing that Zhang has abandoned him, Li decides to snitch. He tells Hao about how the whole situation was Zhang's idea, and that he had promised them wealth and promotion as long as they lured him there. Meanwhile, Zhang is busy crashing out at the rooftop as he tries to understand why none of the shots even came close to hitting the target. His men then point out that the Thunder Beast's attacks had messed up the electromagnetic field in the area, making it quite difficult to aim precisely. Hao then uses the opportunity to order Snitch to escape with Rui and report the whole situation to Ying. He also tells him to take the adjutant with him as proof of the whole event and make sure that the report gets to the chief of staff. Snitch tries to get Hao to come along, but Hao refuses, as it's going to be too risky for all of them to be together. He decides to stay back and take on the oncoming missiles while Snitch drives away. When another round of missiles gets fired, Hao intercepts every single one of them before charging at the perpetrators. Realizing the danger approaching, Zhang orders his men to stop him while he tries to sneak away, but Hao surpasses his expectations. At an immense speed, he lands on the rooftop and takes down all the men easily to Zhang's surprise. While Zhang wonders how he still has so much strength after facing 2 Overlord-class aberrations, Hao knocks him down and grabs him by the throat. Zhang tries to talk his way out of it, but Hao doesn't seem to be interested. Suddenly, a masked B-rank warrior from Greenvine appears from nowhere and knocks Hao off with a punch. While Zhang grovels at his feet, thanking him for saving him, the masked man attacks Hao again. forcing him to retaliate. After exchanging punches for a while, the masked man ends the brawl by knocking Hao out with a powerful punch. He then calls him weak and overrated. He then comments that he thought he'd be fighting against a powerful warrior and not a sewer rat like Hao. After confirming that Hao has passed out, he turns to Zhang and expresses his disappointment in him for losing 2 Overlord-class beasts to the likes of Hao. He then decides to take his leave, making Zhang promise not to disappoint him this time. When he leaves, Zhang does his own deal, delivering a few final blows to the passed-out Hao. He then FaceTimes some of his other men who are holding Jia Jun hostage to show him how. Jun gets riled up as he calls Zhang all sorts of names, but Zhang is not even the least bothered. He orders some of his men to come and take Hao to their base, where he intends to torture him severely. However, Hao, who hasn't lost consciousness fully, uses his last energy to absorb the stealth beast's core before passing out fully. Later, 300 meters underground, at the Green Vine's base, Hao wakes up suspended by chains inside a tube. As a result of the beast core he absorbed, he gains a special ability called Shadow Sneak, which can help him enter a stealth state for 3 minutes and increase his speed during the time span. Like that's not enough. The ability also assures him a guaranteed critical hit immediately after exiting the stealth state. Hao breaks free from where he's detained as soon as he regains consciousness, and notes the facility isn't far from the ruins of before. He finds it odd that something of such was hidden beneath the city all this while. Elsewhere, the scientists are alerted about his escape from the pod, so they notify the security personnel. Hao then uses his ability to mess with the surveillance, preventing his movements from being monitored. The security personnel gather at the front of the door with a tranquilizer, waiting to shoot Hao down. But when the door opens, they do not see anyone. Unknown to them that Hao has used the concealed skill, they rush inside the room to look for him. Hao silently watches them and commends his skill for helping him stay undetected. The downside is that he can only use the skill for 10 minutes. Hao dashes in search of Jia and quickly knocks out the guards watching after him. Hao disables his cloak ability and opens up the cage for Jia, who is surprised to see him. Jia commends Hao for living up to his expectations, and Hao says it was thanks to Jia's teachings. As Jia quenches his thirst, Hao tells him he was originally looking for Jia to ask about Shuo's disappearance, and he never planned to get him involved. Jia tells him he's also been looking for Shuo, and things have gotten more complicated than he had imagined. Jia tells Hao that as soon as the patrol team was formed, the city transferred many of their brothers away under the guise of special assignments. Ever since the men have gone missing and Jia has tried inquiring more, all he learned so far was that they went missing on a mission. Jia's major hindrance was Zhang, who had been secretly pressuring and obstructing him. Hao ponders on the matter and concludes that there are some higher-ups behind the whole underground situation because the city's defense doesn't have much power. He plans to capture Zhang and have him fess up on who the mastermind is. Suddenly, the security personnel storm into the room only to discover that Jia had already been freed. They yell at the men to freeze, so Jia tries to cover for Hao by asking him to run while he fights the men, but upon learning that the men plan to kill Jia, Hao flash steps and knocks them all out with a kick. This shocks Jia, who struggles to process what just happened. Hao then tells Jia that if he runs off, then all his efforts of intentionally getting captured will be for nothing. Once Hao confirms that Jia can move by himself, they set out. Meanwhile, Zhang orders the scientists to release the beasts because Hao will get to them at this rate and kill them. They refuse, reminding him that he's not their boss, but Zhang insists, saying that since their superior isn't around, he'll take over. With that, he orders them to release the monsters while they make their getaway. When Hao sees the monsters approaching, he tells Jia to find a place to hide while he takes on the monsters. Jia fearfully runs to take cover, while Hao uses his beast claws to cut the beast's head off like sashimi. While he tears the creatures apart, Zhang tells the men that it's thanks to his idea that they bought enough time to destroy the data. Zhang believes the aberrations are so many that they'll keep Hao busy, but to his surprise, a boulder hits him from behind. That's when he realizes that Hao has finished battling the beasts. The Vine officers who don't want any trouble ditch Zhang and zoom off. They then blow up the escape route behind them, and Zhang learns he's been used as a sacrificial pawn. Without having any cards to pull, Zhang tells Hao not to come any closer because he still has Jia in custody. Hao doesn't listen to him, and he pins Zhang to the wall, asking him who is calling the shots and what the underground lab is for. Zhang tries using Jia as a last resort, but Jia walks into view. Surprised to see him, Zhang opens up to Hao that the person he's working for is called Hong, a big shot caller who promised Zhang endless riches and glory if he took Hao down. Zhang explains that they are only in one of their bases, and the current one is for rearing aberrations. Hao tells him of how they've been able to monitor him and how they've tampered with the files before he came. Zhang swore on his life that he didn't know about the missing files, but he could show them where the missing members of the patrol were. He suspects Hong might be there, so he asks Hao to let him lead the way. A short while later, Zhang takes them through an underground passage, claiming it leads to Hong. Meanwhile, in the smelly underground, Zhang plans to find a way to get rid of them. Hao, who complains of the stench, suddenly feels an overwhelming presence, so he concludes there's something beneath the underground area they are in. While Jang leads them underground, Hao feels a terrifyingly strong presence that helps him confirm that there's a powerful being close by. The following day, Rui arrives at the Green Vine Fog storage base with Ying and Snitch in search of Hao. When they look around, they only find a pile of aberration corpses, making it difficult for them to figure out what exactly happened. Ying, however, is pissed at the rest of the team for losing Hao during a simple investigation mission. Snitch tells her about the time they once had an issue with Jang over Jun's matter. He never thought he would actually make a move against the Special Response Unit. Ying cuts in that she already reported the issue to Chief Song, and he didn't seem to take it well. Youngji then shows up with the adjutant they had taken hostage, asking for orders on what to do with him. Rui responds that they might still be able to milk out information from him. When she tries to interrogate him about the mastermind behind the operation, Li replies that he doesn't know anything, as Zhang never let him get involved directly. Thanks to Ying's skills, she gathers dirt on Li, which she uses to blackmail him. Realizing his fate, Li then reveals that there's a certain Crimson Fog storage system that Zhang often sneaks into. Hearing this, Rui decides to head there. Youngji tries to stop her, telling her the chief already sent some units to Chishi City to suppress the rebellion. Rui then calmly replies that her objective is not to suppress the rebellion but to ensure Hao's safety. She orders Snitch to take the adjutant back to the city to rendezvous with the remaining units while she orders the rest to come with her. Getting to the Crimson Fog storage room, the team is encountered by a couple of guards who try to restrict their entry, but Rui forcefully makes a way for them by knocking down some of the men. The rest of the guards then immediately report the incident to Lu, the masked warrior who defeated Hao the previous day. Following the report, Lu catches up to them in the storage room. He attempts a sneak attack on Ying, but thanks to her quick reaction time, she manages to dodge it slightly. While the rest of the team wonders who he is, he charges at her again with a deadly punch, but Youngji protects her just in time. Even with his armament hardening, he is still swung across the room like a baseball bat from the effect. Rui then charges at him for an attack, but he evades it easily and punches her in the stomach. To her shock, he then kicks her across the room, crashing her into the walls while the others panic. Picking her back up, Lu mocks the entire Blazing Blood, telling her she's even more pathetic than the sewer rat he took down the previous day. Rui then responds, telling him he's not that strong and that there's no way Hao could have lost to the likes of him. Upset, Lu tosses her into the air and tries to finish her off with a deadly blow, but the unexpected happens as Hao breaks into the room from nowhere and knocks him away with a punch. He then catches Rui midair, like a Disney princess. Seeing this, Ying starts to pout, whining about how she also wants to be carried like a princess, but Hao ignores her completely. He then tells Rui not to worry again as he's here now. Surprised to see Hao around, Rui asks him to confirm if he's okay, and he does likewise to her while beaming a smile. Ying gets jealous, so she interrupts the sweet moment by asking how long they are going to continue doting on each other since they have a huge problem to solve. Although speechless, Hao carefully puts Rui down and hears Lu Feng wonder how he got there. Hao then tells him that Zhang brought him there. Despite seeing Zhang cuffed and ordered around, Lu Feng gets mad at him and doesn't listen to Zhang's explanation about being forced to betray him. He leaps at Zhang, declaring that there's only death for him, and tries to get rid of him with a punch. Zhang's life flashes before his eyes, so he screams for help, and Hao intervenes by stopping Lu Feng's fist, saying Zhang can't die yet. While clinging to the B-ranker's hand, Hao tells Rui that Zhang knows a lot of secrets. She understands what it means, so she stays with Zhang. Pissed, Lu Feng calls Hao a sewer rat, who thinks he can stop him and unleashes a fury of sonic punches at Hao. To his utmost surprise, Hao easily parries all the attacks with one arm, and then says he's too slow before kicking him into a nearby wall. A few seconds later, Lu Feng jumps back while yelling at Hao for pissing him off, and then fires a sonic wind blade at him. Hao dodges the attack and is surprised to see it cut an object. As the others realize that Lu has a special ability, Ying gets mad because he is also a wind-type user just like her, albeit a bit more advanced. Curious, Rui asks Zhang who Lu is, but Zhang tells her he is not sure, and he only knows Lu as Hong's subordinate. Lu throws multiple sonic wind blades at Hao, but Hao easily evades them as if he's doing a warm-up exercise. Done with playing defense, Hao declares that B-rankers are all talk, then he leaps right at Lu and punches him squarely in the face. Shocked at his speed and strength, Lu, who is sent crashing into the wall, wonders if Hao had intentionally lost to him earlier. He hits the wall out of frustration and disbelief, and it causes crimson fog to leak into the facility. Upon seeing the fog, Rui tells her comrades to leave with Zhang. When asked what she plans to do, Rui replies with a question, asking if it's fun toying with an imposter. Lin agrees with her, and she tells him to follow her orders. Suddenly, Ying stops her and says she has an idea. Meanwhile, Lu, who has been backed into a corner, takes out a pill and swallows it despite knowing it'll shave away his lifespan. The reason for taking it is to help him absorb the power of the crimson fog and stay sane, even though it's for a short period of time. Surging with power, Lu yells at Hao to come at him, but then flies straight at Hao to unleash a fury of attacks. Hao gets pushed back and is shocked at how fast Lu has gotten. While at it, Lu brags about how his speed and power are comparable to an A-ranker's. He punches Hao in the gut and sends him flying away. Now brimming with confidence, Lu asks Hao how long he plans to block his attacks. As he prepares to finish Hao off, he sees that the entire crimson fog has been blown apart with a huge gust of wind, with Ying being the mastermind. She amps Hao with the technique she calls Storm Blessing, and his body immediately feels lighter. With the remaining crimson fog left, Lu fires the fog at them all with the hopes of killing them, but Hao shocks him by absorbing the crimson cannon attack. Hao instantly appears before Lu and lands a barrage of fist attacks on the wind user. He then tells Lu that he doesn't need crimson fog to deal with him. As he clobbers Lu to the ground, Lu wonders where the tenacity is coming from and even compares Hao to a monster. After Lu gets ragdolled, Hao asks him for Hong's location. At the Crimson Fog storage base, watching Hao defeat Lu so easily, one of Hong's men begins to panic. Hong even remarks that he's quite impressed as Hao has surpassed his expectations. When his men ask him for the next step, he instructs them to destroy all the remaining data in the base and retreat with him. He then triggers a device on their way out to awaken something that has been asleep for way too long. Meanwhile, back in the building, Hao tries to question Lu for Hong's whereabouts but realizes he went a little too far and knocked him out. He then gets a little surprised because he didn't even fight with his full strength, but also expected Lu to be stronger. Disappointed, he shifts his attention to Zhang and asks him to take him to the place where the patrol members were sent. Practically pissing his pants, Zhang cooperates and begins to lead them through a narrow underground passageway. Eventually, they get to a door that apparently cannot be opened without a password. Not wasting any time, Hao destroys the door with brute force and makes a passage for them. They then get to another door, from which Hao senses people's presences. This time around, he knows he cannot open the door with force, as he could end up hurting the people inside. Ying then steps up confidently and decides to put her technical skills into use. After attempting access for a while, her advanced technology device supersedes the defense system, forcing the door open. What they see beyond the door puts them in absolute shock as they've never seen anything like it before. It's a room full of people suspended in tubes like test subjects. Rui grabs Zhang out of anger, preparing an attack as she asks what they're doing with all the people there. Pleading for his dear life, Zhang replies that he has no idea and that all he did was follow orders and bring them here. Going through the room, Hao eventually finds a Shuo in one of the tubes. He tries to break him out, but Ying stops him immediately, pointing out that they're currently in life support devices and forcefully breaking them out would just be as good as killing them. She then suggests that they report to the Technical Bureau first to supply them with specialized equipment to aid the rescue. Conveniently, Rui receives a report at that same moment from Snitch that the other units have arrived at the city already. She then orders him to bring them to the Crimson Fog storage base immediately. Shortly after, Youngji alerts them about a strange glowing crystal in the corner of the room, and when they analyze it, they discover it to be releasing some kind of energy. Meanwhile, Zhang, recognizing the crystal, begins to panic as he mutters that something is coming. Shortly after Ying confirms that the crystal contains a high concentration of crimson fog energy, the ground begins to quake. Hao then realizes that something massive is coming their way. At that same moment, Lu, who has now undergone full beastification, suddenly shows up and tries to attack Ying, but Hao manages to protect her. Seeing him, Rui confirms his appearance to be similar to that of her uncle. Hao then confirms that the crystal's purpose is to attract aberrations. Knowing that something far more dangerous is coming, he grabs the crystal and bolts out of the room at an immense speed. His goal is to gain as much distance as he can from the storage base so it doesn't get torn apart by the creature approaching. While Rui decides to tag along with him, Lu chases them down for the crystal as well. Meanwhile, Hong watches from a chopper, prepared to see just how much more Hao can surprise him. After gaining enough distance, Hao tosses the device as far as he can, and as expected, Lu leaps after it to catch it. Then all of a sudden, the most terrifying thing happens. A gigantic behemoth-class aberration emerges from the ground and swallows both Lu and the crystal. As the vehicles head to Chishi Ruins, Lin Yongxin, Lin Yongji's elder brother, asks Snitch why Rui wants them to go to the Crimson Fog storage base. He curiously asks what happened, but Snitch tells him he doesn't know much, and Rui has said there was a research lab under the place. Suddenly, they see a behemoth-class monster tower above the sky, not too far off, and Yongxin realizes it's something the others can't handle. He kicks the door and notes that he is the only one who can handle the behemoth by using his beast armament. Startled and confused, Snitch calls out to Yongxin, but the instructor orders him to take the reinforcement to the research lab while he heads over there first. With that, he heads straight for the monster and wonders what has happened. Outside the research lab, Rui and Hao stare at the enormous monster in disbelief and wonder how it was lured there. The behemoth, on the other hand, observes them, and after seeing that Hao has a lot of aura, it screeches and charges Hao, but Hao immediately beastifies his arm and attacks it. Unfortunately, no single damage is taken. Rui immediately advises Hao to retreat with her, but he tells her the beast is interested in him, which is why it was attacking them, and it won't be a good idea for him to leave because the Crimson Storage Fog will be where the beast will go. With that, he tells her to go get the people in the research lab as soon as possible while he holds the beast off. Hearing Hao plans to face the behemoth alone, Rui disagrees, but he leaps at the monster either way. Rui screams his name while noting that she cannot let the behemoth destroy the clue she has worked hard to get. Back at the lab, Ying checks Shuo's life readings with her computer, and as she tries searching the database for his personal info, she sees that every other data related to him has been destroyed. At this point, she admits that the job was carried out by an expert. The door to the lab opens suddenly, and Snitch shows up with reinforcement. He sees that Jia is hale and hearty and finally relaxes. But then he asks for Hao's location. While they are discussing, Tang Ye, Yongshin's adjutant, speaks to Yongji and informs him that they've come to help Rui in suppressing the rebellion. Ye asks for Rui's location and also for an update on the current situation. The younger Lin first tells him that Rui had instructed them to guard the lab, and he then asks where Yongji is. Meanwhile, on the surface, Hao utilizes his concealment ability to sneak and distract the behemoth before revealing himself and landing on its eye. He stabs the eye with poison vein, but the behemoth whisks him away with its tongue and then tries to gobble him up. Rui immediately supports Hao by shooting the tongue off with a mini railgun. The use of her special ability without a Beast Core suit or Beast Core weapon takes a huge toll on her. While she grits her teeth and notes that Hao might be the only person in the world who doesn't need a combat suit or armor to use his special abilities with his bare hands, the behemoth attacks her. Hao dashes to save her, but it looks like he won't make it. As he screams her name out of nowhere, a loud explosion hits the monster, sending it backwards. They are shocked when they see instructor Lin Yongshin standing right before them. The older Lin confirms they are okay and sees he's up against a behemoth-class aberration. He analyzes the situation and then tells them to leave it to him. Lin, who is an A-rank soldier, hurls a huge flame at the behemoth. His power impresses the onlookers, and they feel the difference in their abilities. Still, the behemoth remains unfazed, so Lin prepares for another attack after seeing that it won't be easy to take the beast down. To his surprise, rather than attacking head-on, the monster breathes some kind of thick sandstorm, covering the entire area and making it difficult to see. Almost immediately after, Hao senses its presence coming from below, so he immediately warns the others that the beast has gone underground. Thanks to his warning, they all barely manage to evade the monster's surprise attack. But the problem of the thick sandstorm persists. Suddenly, Ying shows up from a distance and clears the air with her wind ability, restoring all their sight. Rui is surprised to see her, as she expects her to still be tending to the people held captive in the underground base. Yongji, who has also come along, then explains that everything is already being taken care of by the reinforcements Lin brought. Together, the team decides to use their numbers to their advantage by distracting the beast and creating openings. The beast tries to go underground, but Lin and Ying stop it with a powerful combination of their fire and wind attacks. To their surprise, the beast still doesn't die. Instead, it regenerates immediately and shakes it off like it's nothing. Lin then tells them that the only way to stop a creature this overpowered is by destroying its beast core. But given its size, they know that finding it alone is going to be a huge problem. The beast tries to cover the area with another sandstorm, but Ying blocks it immediately with her wind attack. Rui then uses the opportunity to attempt an X-ray scan with her electromagnetic induction. Thankfully, she's able to find it, but she drains all her energy in the process. Lin then instructs Yongji to take her away from the area. Based on the intel she provided, he readies a powerful fire attack and converges it at the left side of the monster's abdomen. As a result of the attack, the monster's skin opens up, exposing its core. He then fires some continuous attacks along with Ying to destroy it, but it's to no avail, as the monster's defense is too strong. Seeing this, Hao realizes that he might have to use one of his cannon blast attacks to take down the monster. But unfortunately, he doesn't have enough Crimson Fog energy left to converge one, as he had used it all up during his fight with Lu earlier. At that moment, he finds the shining crystal on the floor and is quite confused because the monster had swallowed it earlier. He then realizes that it must have shot out after Lin's attack. Since Ying had confirmed earlier that it contains concentrated Crimson Fog energy, he picks it up and decides to gamble on it. When he tries to absorb it, the energy rush becomes overwhelming as it engulfs his body with more energy than he can bear. Meanwhile, the monster knocks off Lin and Ying, who work together to hold it down. It then changes bearing and heads straight for Yongji, who is currently trying to get Rui as far away as possible from the area. The moment it catches up to them and is about to swallow them, Hao shows up with the biggest Crimson Rasengan ever and delivers it to the beast, destroying its core for good this time. Somewhere unknown, Hao sees Xue, who runs to him and hugs him. She asks him where he went, but he apologizes to her and says it's his fault. He then asks her why she's in his mindscape, but she seems confused. He looks around and asks her why they are at. As he holds her hands, his arm catches fire, then all of his body ignites. Xue is shocked to see him burn, so she calls out to him, but he tells her not to come near him. He suddenly wakes up screaming Xue's name and has a vision of his morphed hand on fire and his sister calling on him to save her. Hao realizes he's in a different place and wonders where exactly. He hears instructor Lin tell him that he's at Blazing Blood Medical Research Institute. Confused to see Lin in the room, Hao asks him what he's doing there, and Lin says it's because his case is special. He had been watching him to solve any problems in case Hao loses control. Hao learns he had been asleep for 3 days, and Lin had considered taking matters into his own hands. On hearing how he almost got axed, Hao reminds himself that the military cannot fully trust a humanoid aberration, so it's only natural, which is why he must use the resources he has to quickly find Shue. Hao asks about the others, and Lin briefs him that everyone is fine and they are back at the research base. He then asks about Shuo, and as Lin tries telling him what's up, Ying storms into the room after learning he's awake. She examines his body against his will and confirms that he's fine despite absorbing such a high amount of highly concentrated crimson fog. While holding onto his shirt, she asks him what kind of being he is since he has surpassed the scope of humanity. Hao pushes her back for overstepping her boundaries and then asks her about Shuo. A few moments later, Hao follows Ying and Lin to the isolation room where Shuo's health is being monitored. Ying then explains that Shuo has absorbed a large amount of crimson fog, but even though there's no infection, Shuo is still unconscious and he shows no signs of waking up. Hao gets mad and curses Zhang for putting Shuo in such a situation. He then asks what the person behind Zhang is monitoring, but to his utmost surprise, Lin tells him that Zhang has confessed. Hao expects to hear the connection to Greenvine, but he hears something different from Rui, who walks into the room. She tells Hao that Zhang said he was the mastermind behind the whole operation. Hao, who is surprised to see Rui, asks her what she's talking about because of Lu Feng and also Zhang mentioning the beasts tamed in the underground research lab, then also the people being experimented upon. Rui tells him that she's aware there's an invisible hand manipulating everything because she's aware of everything Hao said. The problem is that all evidence points towards Zhang and Zhang alone. She then tells him to follow her because her father wants to see her. On their way, he asks her how she knew where he was, and Rui tells him Ying had notified her. Annoyed at the technical know-it-all, Hao wonders if she'll monitor all his private activities as time goes on. They get to the office, and the chief of staff tells them to come in. Once inside, Ying's father, the head of research, tells his partner to sit with them for the meeting. They all settle down, and Rui's father goes straight to business by telling Hao about how his victory against the behemoth-class aberration has already spread. As a result, not only the military but many other factions have their eyes on him. He tells Hao how delicate the matter is and then asks him if he has any plans regarding the matter. Hao recalls how he had originally planned on moving discreetly, but things had taken an unexpected turn. Now, for him to be called for such a meeting, then, it's not just for simple questioning. Hao decides to ask for the chief of staff's opinion. Director Song starts by confirming if Hao is aware of Zhang's situation. Once Hao tells him he thinks Zhang is hiding something, Director Song speaks on how the Greenvine Group gave a statement that they have no ties and know nothing about the underground basement and the taming base. He checks the record and confirms that there are no executives with the name Hong. What's worse is the fact that the Greenvine cannot be publicly investigated due to their ties with the military, so they'll need irrefutable evidence to carry that out. The lead scientist tells him that due to the mole situation in the military, they can't investigate Greenvine because the higher-ups won't allow it. Hao asks for clarification on who the higher-ups are, and Director Song calls them the apex of their world. They are known as the highest level of the SU government. With that, the man makes his intentions clear that he'd like to borrow Hao's power. Hao realizes that the chief of staff doesn't really care about him but wants to use him as a pawn. Rui immediately speaks against it by asking why they want to use Hao despite knowing how precarious his situation already is. Instructor Lin, who already sees where Director Song is headed, speaks up about Hao's situation, saying that Hao needs to become the hunter rather than being hunted like prey. Old Man Song tells Hao not to answer immediately, but to go back and think carefully about his decision before coming back for an answer. With that, he puts Lin Yongxin in charge again and dismisses them. Later that night, Hao stands atop the military building and broods on the matter, wondering which decision to take. A few days later at the headquarters, Chief Song organizes a 3-month multi-party comprehensive training under the pretext of improving the combat power of new Blazing Blood members. But in reality, the real purpose of the training is to delay the outbreak of internal disagreements, clear out spies, and unify the military voice. Hao, however, still hasn't moved past the request the chief made to him. At the Blazing Blood, there's a point system for all the members, in which they can obtain points through missions, training, and free duels, exchanged for internal military items. One afternoon, while the recruits are gathered in a training room, a large screen displays the top 3 highest point scorers among them. The recruits are shocked to see that Hao, the highest scorer, owns as many as 210 points. Ying and Jin, who happen to be the second and third, own 95 and 45 points respectively. In military terms, one of those points equals 1,000 alliance points, making Hao richer than an average citizen. As expected, rumors circulate about the unfairness in the system. Although it's no longer a secret that he defeated a behemoth-class aberration, the recruits believe that the narrative is false. Even Jin remarks that Hao was only lucky to have been there, as he's sure it was Instructor Lin who took down the beast. Rui, who just so happens to be there with Ying, gets upset after hearing Jin speak. She tells him to keep his wild guesses to himself, pointing out that Hao was way stronger than he could ever become, but Jin still keeps yapping. Tang Ye, the Blazing Blood 7th Squad's captain, then cuts in, telling them to stop engaging in meaningless arguments. He explains to Jin that Hao's points were calculated by the system according to established rules and that it was verified by Lin himself. He then remarks that he understands everyone's doubts, and for that reason, he has decided to give them a show. The captain challenges Hao to a duel right there, wagering 40,000 alliance coins. Hearing the amount, Ying immediately calculates that the money would be enough to upgrade a dorm room into a single room with a private bath for a whole year. She then begins to cheer Hao on, asking him to win the fortune for her sake. As expected, Hao sees the duel as a means of establishing his authority, so he accepts. When the duel begins, Tang warns Hao about his ice ability Beast Core as he launches an attack. After evading the attack, Hao remarks that as a B-rank warrior, Tang's power is much stronger than Lu's. However, it's way slower. While he charges forward, Tang fires a couple of ice attacks, but Hao evades them easily, to the other recruits' amazement. Tang then creates a massive attack, which normally should be enough to defeat Hao, but to everyone's surprise, Hao evades it easily as well and attempts a sneak attack on Tang. Lin then arrives just before Hao makes contact and ends the duel. From the result of the duel, he declares Hao as the leader, and Tang agrees to it. The entire room goes quiet as the recruits are shocked to see that Hao has just defeated someone known to be the strongest B-rank warrior. Jin, however, gets frustrated at the power gap between himself and Hao. Out of anger, he makes up his mind that he has to get stronger, whichever way possible, so he can kill him with his own hands. A month later, Song gets a report from a patrol team about a beastman who was spotted causing havoc somewhere not too far away. He then summons Jin Ying to discuss it. Turns out the beastman is Song's long-lost brother, who had gotten infected a while back. He asks Jin Ying about the chances of his brother reverting to normal, and the scientist responds that it's even less than 1%. As a matter of fact, Hao may be the only one alive who possesses the power. After confirming the details from the scientist, Song decides that they might have to do the unexpected. Jin Ying points out how upset his daughter will be if he has her uncle killed, but Song replies that it's something that has to be done to save more lives. Later, when Rui finds out about it, she confronts her father, asking why he didn't inform her. She begs him to put her on the mission, but her old man refuses. He even bans her from leaving the headquarters, as she'd only get in the way of the actual mission. Devastated, Rui heads to the underground parking lot, where she meets Ying, who hands her a bag of supplies. Ying tells her to do what she has to do, as she will figure out a way to buy her time with her father. Rui then gratefully accepts the bag and heads straight to her car. While she drives off, she wonders if her father's judgment would have been different if she had told him she was the reason her uncle got eroded in the first place. She then makes up her mind that she's not going to back down until she finds a way to turn him back into a human. At the base cafeteria, Ying speaks high and mighty as they dig into their feast. Snitch thanks his stars and even wonders if the world won't come to an end for getting to enjoy such a luxurious meal. As for the man of the hour, he tells them to enjoy themselves after all. He isn't short of money. Seeing that Rui and Lin aren't around, Hao asks Ying what they are up to, and Ying tells him Rui took a few days leave because she had some things to do. Snitch informs Hao that Yongji also had other missions to carry out. Hao thinks about Rui's behavior and notes that she hasn't been trying to win him over to the chief of staff's faction like he had thought, because her behavior back then during the meeting was clearly against it. Hao then wonders what Rui wants him to do. Ying's phone suddenly rings, and after getting the alert, she shows it to Hao. Hao immediately gets up and tells Snitch that Shuo has woken up. Snitch, who is more concerned about the food, asks if they are to visit Shuo now. Once Hao affirms, Snitch leaves along with them, and Hao tells Ying to call Li, Shuo's younger brother, and inform him about it. When they get to the Medical Research Institute, Li runs to meet Shuo happily and asks him where he has been all this time. Shuo apologizes to him, and Snitch cries while watching the heartwarming scene. Hao, who is eager for information, has no choice but to disrupt the brothers. He tells Shuo he has some questions for him. Shuo asks Hao who he is, and Li tells Shuo that Hao is their benefactor. Hao shows Shuo the picture Li had with Shui and asks him what he knows about her. Shuo thinks back, and Ying tries to help him remember. Shuo then calmly recalls the day the Crimson Fog erupted and how he was sent to search and rescue survivors. The gruesome scene is still etched in his memory, and he remembers coming across Shuo, who had lost her memory, near a crashed helicopter. She didn't have any major injuries, so they sent her to the shelter established by the military. She stayed there for about 2 days before 2 people came with warrants and informed the soldiers that they would be taking her for psychological trauma treatment. Hao asks Shuo where they had taken Shui, and Shuo tells him to Suyin Town. Back then, he had followed her to the town as her guardian since she couldn't recollect anything about herself, but he then left to take on other missions, and an accident happened. That was all Shuo could recollect so far. After hearing him out, Hao mentions the town's name, determines that it's his next destination. Ying, on the other hand, recalls Rui's uncle disappearing in the same town, so she believes it wasn't a coincidence. She wonders what secret Suyin Town holds. Later that evening, in the outer mountain area of Suyin, Rui sees that the mountain area is heavily guarded, since she has investigated the town and not gotten any trace of her uncle. She wonders if he's in the mountains, so she scales the walls and overhears the men talking about how their boss doesn't want anyone to find out what's happening in the area. Rui then spots 2 trucks filled with bags, so she wonders what's in the bags for the people around to act mysterious. Suddenly, a surveillance alarm blares out and Rui realizes she's been spotted. The men hear the sound and they spot her, so one of them shoots at her and then tells the other to contact their boss. Rui immediately tries to make a run for it, but more men surround her. Left with no choice, she zaps them, but doesn't fall under strain thanks to the Beast Core gloves she wore. The only downside is she can't draw out her full power with them. As she stands her ground against the men, someone approaches her from behind, saying she's trying to sneak into his territory. Rui immediately tries to electrocute him, but to her surprise, he tells her it didn't hurt and grabs her by the arm before throwing her off. The B-rank man then asks her to tell him who sent her. Rui is shocked to discover that her lightning attack doesn't have any effect in the underground boss. While more of his men charge at her, she takes them down easily and charges straight at the boss. Since she can't use her ultimate move, she delivers an attack which is meant to paralyze the man, at least for a brief period. To her shock, even that doesn't have an effect. The man then reveals his military combat suit, which is the sole reason why he's still standing after taking on her attacks. Seeing the suit, Rui gets puzzled as man of his caliber normally shouldn't have access to such discreet equipment. The man orders some other of his men to capture her, promising them that he'll let them have some fun with her. As expected, the men jump on the opportunity and start charging at her. Since Rui doesn't have her combat suit, using her abilities would cause her body a state of exhaustion, so she panics. While one of the men jumps at her, Hao appears from nowhere and delivers him a solid punch that knocks him straight into oblivion, taking everyone by surprise. Annoyed at the sight of the new invader, the boss orders his men to take him down, this time promising them 10% of the mine's profits. The moment the men charge at Hao, Ying shows up with her wind attack and wipes them all away. Seeing his men defeated so easily by the invaders, the boss decides to get serious and end things. While he prepares a dangerous-looking attack, Rui warns Hao to be careful, as the man is probably a B-rank warrior, but Hao tells her not to worry. He then holds a finger up, announcing to the man that he'll take him down in just a second. Annoyed, the man charges at him for a fatal blow, but Hao, just like he had announced, ends the fight in a single second, knocking the boss out. He had seen the fight as a perfect opportunity to test out the result of his recent training with instructor Lin. The team then decides to head somewhere else to discuss. Setting camp in a rocky area, Hao questions Rui over lunch about her recent actions. Asking about the sudden leave she took, he's shocked to find out that she had snuck out without her father's notice. Ying then asks her why those men were attacking her, and Rui responds that she had simply discovered their base on the mountain not too long ago, and that they're probably a shady underground gang, but she points out that they're not the main people she's investigating. She explains the situation about her uncle, who got beastified, to Hao, and he's beyond shocked to hear about it. She then confesses that the main reason she recruited him was that she had hoped he'd be able to find a way to help her revert him to normal. Hearing this, Hao explains that if it's a minor Crimson Fog arriving case like Ailey's, he'd be able to handle it, but for something that critical, he doesn't know if he'd be able to. All the same, he promises to do whatever he can to help her see to her goal, making her extremely happy. When Rui asks why they came in the first place, Hao reveals the information Asura gave them about his sister being brought here half a year ago. Rui then comments that in the past few days that she has been in town, everybody she tried to hold a conversation with kept acting strange, pointing out that there's probably something beyond the ordinary going on. While the team sets out, they make up their minds that they must uncover the secret of the town and find Hao's sister. In Suyin Town, Ying and the others take down the men who come after them. One of their foes tries making a run for it, but before Ying can catch up, the dude is knocked out by someone else. They wonder who the person is and realize that it's Ye. They ask him what he's doing in Suyin, but he tells them to walk with him because he can't talk based on where they are. They follow him to a safe zone, and he tells them he's under the Chief of Staff's orders to find Zhao, Rui's uncle, and also ensure her safety. Rui realizes that her father is aware that she's been missing, so she asks Ye if he came alone. Ye tells her that the team members are at the temporary camps in the mountains, and they found traces of beastmen, but there's an Overlord-class aberration in the mountains, so they are looking for a way to bypass it. Ye then tells Rui that if she abandons her search and goes back to the headquarters, her dad will reduce her punishment. Ye tries discouraging them to leave the mission, but Rui reminds him that it's her uncle, and she can stop the professionals from using force against him if she's there to watch. Ying insists on following Rui since Rui is her best friend. Upon seeing how hell-bent they are on tagging along, Ye tells them that they should follow him back to the headquarters once the mission is over. He then informs them that his team has found a deserted path that leads inside. As he notified his teammates about Rui's group, Hao asks him if he had come across any building like a research lab while searching for the man-beast. Ye confirms his suspicions and wonders how Hao knows about it. Shuo had mentioned something about it, and after Hao had searched around the town, he realized that it was in the mountains. The party gears up and heads there. On getting there, Ye shows them the cave and tells them there isn't any electronic equipment set up. Before Rui enters the cave, Hao stops her and hands her a wrapped weapon, which he used the Thunderbolt Beast Core and 150 Grand Alliance coins to upgrade. Ying jealously asks for hers, but Hao tells her to work for it. Ye then tells the party to ensure they are on alert once they are inside the cave. With that, they all walk into it, and Ying's energy reader goes through the roof. As she wonders why it's acting so chaotic, an overlord serpent spits out corrosive venom at her. Ye instantly creates an ice shield to protect her, but the shield eventually breaks, and the venom spills on him. Ye groans and falls to the ground after being hit, and he tells them the python is very good at camouflage, and it has caused a lot of trouble for his squad. Hao watches his reaction and notes that Ye acted as if he knew beforehand that the python would attack Ying. Hao immediately steps in to help, and he fights the python on equal footing. Ye, who is the first to witness him fight an overlord class, learns the hard truth that Hao by far outclasses him. From nowhere, another overlord class shows up. This one is a minotaur with flaming hair. As if that isn't enough, another overlord class aberration joins in, making 3. Genuinely surprised, Ye struggles to process why and how there are 2 more of the beasts around them. From the top of the hill, the underground boss shows himself and tells them he won't be careless like the last time. Hao is shocked that the underground boss can willingly control overlord class aberrations, and he wonders how he can do it better than Zhang. Ye apologizes for leading them to danger, so he tells them he'll temporarily restrain the snake while he leaves the rest to them. Ying wonders if he can handle it all by himself, so she tells him not to push himself too hard. Ye then reminds her that he promised to bring them back to the headquarters safely, so he must fulfill his duty. Hao then speaks to Rui and tells her it's best they split up to deal with the monsters. She agrees and says she'll handle the Minotaur, and it'll be the perfect time to try her weapon. Within seconds, the battle commences, and the python tries taking a bite out of Ye. Ye immediately freezes its path, forcefully causing the creature to withdraw its head. The underground boss then talks to Hao, cockingly, by bragging about how tough the steel lizard's scales are. He says Ying is useless in the match, so it's 4 against 1. Hao hears his math and tells him to correct himself because Rui, who is in a rage, is someone he cannot afford to provoke. Rui charges her gun and prepares to shoot the Minotaur, but it lunges at her so she avoids its snarl and shoots it at close range. As for the steel lizard, Hao leaps at it and claws its hard skin while Ying fires her wind at it. Just then, the underground boss who perches on top of the steel lizard diffuses her attack, and she wonders how he did that. In that instant, the beast fires a beam at them, but they back off just in time to avoid it. After watching its move firsthand, Hao and Ying signal to each other, and they perform a combo by combining their abilities and firing a surge attack. This time around, it breaks the steel lizard's scale, and it falls to the floor uncontrollably. The underground boss also falls off, and as the monster fires beams from its head, Hao immediately dashes at the underground boss, sparing him no time to react, and he throws him into the lizard's attack before clobbering the monster with his beastified hands. As for Rui, she stands in amazement after seeing the fallen Minotaur she had defeated and realizes she has just won an overlord class. After that, she joins Ying and Hao, and they rush in to help Tang, who's been struggling with keeping the giant snake at bay. After easily defeating the creature, Rui thanks Hao for the weapon, and as they chat back and forth, Ying tells them to attend to the injured. She then rushes to Tang, but he tells her he's fine and praises their teamwork. Rui also thanks him for containing the snake, and she adds that she'll give a detailed report on his performance to the headquarters. The underground boss, who managed to survive all the onslaught, tries running away, but they easily corner him, and Tang tells them they need to interrogate him, so Hao grabs him by the neck, and as the dude begs for his life, Hao tells him to fess up. He asks what activities are being done in the mountains, and the underground boss reveals that there's a type of red crystal being mined in the mountains, which the military isn't aware of, and he and his goons have been selling it on the black market. With that, he points towards the mountains, saying it leads to the mine pit, and they can have all the crystals, but they should spare him. Hao, on the other hand, is more curious about how the guy can control the monsters, so he asks the dude about it. The underground boss hesitates a little even when strangled, and all of a sudden, the Minotaur behind them comes to life and lunges at them. They immediately turn their backs, and with the underground boss finally free from Hao's grip, he pulls out a knife while Hao tries to fight the monster. Meanwhile, at the Suyin mine, a cloaked figure walks into the place after discovering it and immediately touches one of the red crystals there. In that instant, he absorbs the energy and notes that it should suppress the erosion in her body for a while. Just then, the figure removes their cloak after sensing the aberration being controlled, and it's revealed she's a horned fella. Back at the mountain grounds, the underground boss leaps at Ying to stab her, hoping to kill her before making his escape, and by the time she notices him, he has closed in on her. Just then, Tang willingly takes the blow from the knife before creating an ice blade and cutting the dumb boss's throat, killing him instantly. Hao, on the other hand, just finished dealing the death blow to the Minotaur. Surprised, Ying asks Tang why he had killed the dude since they hadn't gotten enough info from him yet. Rui also joins in and notes that Ying could have easily avoided such a sneak attack, and she wonders why Tang went overboard. In his defense, he explains that he couldn't hide his emotions, and even though he knew they were an amazing squad, he couldn't risk them getting hurt, so he went all out on the ruffian. With that out of the way, Rui tells them to return to camp to have Tang's wound treated. As they head back, the mysterious horned lady sees them and realizes they are from the military. She then spots Hao and is shocked to see him. In that moment, he senses her presence, but she hides, and Rui finds it strange that Hao halted, so she asks him what's up, but he tells her it's nothing. As they continue walking back, the strange girl holds her head as she recognizes Hao, and memories of him flash through her mind. At that moment, she realizes he's her brother. Shortly afterwards, the others return, and Tang shows them a building. He informs them that it was once used as a test lab. Hao rushes in, so Ying follows him to check the place out to see if he can find clues about his sister. When they get in, they realize the place has been abandoned for quite a while. Meanwhile, the other two outside check around. While at it, Rui asks Tang why he was really sent on the mission, and he admits that her father sent him to eliminate her uncle Zhao if things get to the worst. But before all that, they have to find him first, and hopefully, he can be captured. Later that night, at the temporary camp in the valley, they meet up, and Tang and Rui, who hadn't found anything, learn that Hao and Ying had found a hard drive and a diary. While Ying repairs the drive, Rui goes through the diary and learns about the Crimson Fog incident and how it had not only leaked a few months back, but the military was ordered to massacre the infected people and capture those who had undergone the beastification phenomenon. As time progressed, they discovered a red ore that absorbed Crimson Fog, so they began to mine it. Later on, they learned about how the cause of the frequent mountain movement was a behemoth-class aberration. Because of this, they had to evacuate while they ensured a certain girl, their alpha research subject, was protected. The diary ended with the writer wondering if disposing of the Crimson-infected people was the right or wrong call. Moments later, Ying clenches her fist happily after successfully repairing the drive, and she sees video footage of a girl being experimented on, so she calls Hao to have a look. Hao and Rui go over to check the laptop after learning that Ying has recovered a partition of the hard drive. Hao freaks out when he sees Shue's file with her as the alpha research subject, but when Tang asks him why he freaked out, Ying immediately opens up another folder and shows him pictures of contaminated people. While they go through it, Hao notes that the diary involves inside information on the military, and the fact that it mentions Shue, he can't show Tang about it for the time being. Rui, upon seeing the Beastmen's condition, is glad that they can be helpful to her dad's research. Her main goal is hoping they can gain more data on their condition and discover a way to regain her uncle's sanity. Curious, Tang points to another file, and when they open it, they see Shue standing close to a behemoth-class aberration in the mountains, and this has Hao confused. Tang, on the other hand, is frightened, so as he panics while wondering if the monster is still alive, he learns the photo was taken about 3 months back. He immediately studies the photo and connects the dots, drawing out its location. Then he informs them that he'll take his squad there to check it out, while he asks Ying to notify him if she has any new discoveries. Right after he leaves, they continue checking the files, and Hao realizes that Shue's, along with other test subject indicators, far exceed those of the normal humans. Among them, they come across Hong, the same man they heard about in Qishi City. Rui adds that her father had tried to investigate Hong to know his connections with the Greenvine group, but nothing came out. Still, she believes that if he had participated in Shue's experiment, then Shue might be in the hands of someone from Greenvine. Hao watches as the clues start clicking, then he makes up his mind to go to the aberration. After all, he believes it wasn't a coincidence that his sister was there. Upon hearing him, Ying and Rui offer to come along, and with that, the trio embarks to the western side of the mountains. On getting there, they spot the behemoth-class monster perfectly blending with the mountains. Ying checks her monster meter and sees that the creature is sleeping, so she tells them the coast is clear. Shortly afterwards, they approach it, and upon getting close, the radar goes off the charts, signifying that it is awake. Ying immediately warns them, so they get into formation. Right after, the monster spews out lava at them widely, burning some of the men. While Tang calls for backup from headquarters, Rui, who shoots at it, wonders why the creature isn't attacking them directly, but the whole area. Ying, who understands what it's doing, explains to them that the monster is changing the surrounding environment by trying to trap them to death. Realizing they can't wait for headquarters to arrive, Hao prepares to do battle and signals it's time to fight, but then Ying tells him to cool off because the behemoth is stuck in the mountain, and since its vital signs have not recovered fully, they still have a chance. Rui agrees with her, and they decide to contain it all together to show the efforts of their training. So they all fire their attacks at it, and when it stops responding, Ying signals to them to retreat before it wakes up. Unfortunately for them, while they try to make their escape, the behemoth tries its best to break free from the mountain it's trapped under, and after having a go at it, it succeeds. Shocked, they all realize they're cooked, and they stand in fear as the monster goes into a rampage. Still staring at the monster, Hao tells them they'll have to stop its rampage. Rui agrees with him and tells Tang and the others to assist, or else the monster will raze the nearby town to the ground before the headquarters can show up. As the others ask for command, Tang tells them that Rui and Hao have successfully defeated a behemoth class before, but unlike them, the other soldiers should scram since they are in no place to fight. Immediately, the monster releases its volcanic breath, and the other soldiers run off while wishing them luck. Just then, Tang goes right ahead and uses his ice to offset the lava. He then tells them to rely on him for defense while they fight the monster. After watching Tang use his abilities, Hao wonders if Tang has the energy to take on a behemoth-sized aberration. He gets lost in his thoughts as he wonders why Tang struggled against the lower class earlier that day. But then Rui snaps him out of it. She then fires her gun, and Ying follows up with sonic wind slashes. Hao notices that the long-range attacks aren't doing enough damage, so he closes in on the monster and tries to attack it with his claw, but the creature whacks him away with its tail. Hao immediately gets up and notes that the monster is troublesome and more aggressive than the behemoth they fought in Chishi City. All of a sudden, the creature stops attacking them and they get confused, so Ying checks her meter and notes that the vital signs have been weak all along. So she tells them about how when the eye on the behemoth lights up, the creature's vital signs fluctuate violently. Just by listening to her, Hao realizes that the monster has internal injuries, and that's why it dares not sustain outbursts. Rui then offers to try out a theory by attacking the monster's eye to see if they can negate its frantic behavior. Immediately, she and Ying fire their attacks at it, but it releases red crystals which explode and their shockwaves offset their attacks. Just by watching it, Rui realizes that something is wrong, and she feels the monster knows their attacks, as it can read them. Hao then asks her if she has a strategy, and she affirms. For starters, Hao will attack it at close range, and while it fires its lava breath at him, Tang will use his ice to stop its attack. Immediately after, Hao can attack it. They follow through with the plan, and when Hao knocks it backwards, Rui fires her railgun at it, and the monster immediately deploys red crystals to defend itself, but Ying blows them away with wind magic, causing the cannon to hit the behemoth squarely in the eye. As a result, the monster temporarily loses its abilities, so Rui signals to Tang, who readily prepares an ice spear and notes that their strategy is perfect. While grinning, he apologizes and throws his spear at Hao instead of the behemoth. Hao notices the spear a little too late, but he reacts just in time to be struck in the shoulder. Utterly shocked, the others yell at Tang, wondering if he's crazy, but he pulls out a red crystal and then commends Hao and the others for standing their ground against the behemoth and weakening it, and informs them that he now has a chance. Rui immediately asks him who he is, and Ying wonders if he's the one her dad has been investigating, the army mole they've been trying to catch all this while. They ask him why he had helped them earlier, and he reveals it's to gain their trust. He then admits that from the moment he accepted the mission, every step he took was within his calculation. Firstly, Tang explains how he was the one who controlled the overlord class they had fought earlier, as he had used their blood scent to awaken the behemoth. Lastly, he reveals how he had planned to use the behemoth to kill them all while he captured and took Hao away, but things didn't work as planned. Hao curiously asks Tang why he went through all the trouble for him, but Tang tells him that he'll find out naturally once he gets to where he wants to take him. All of a sudden, the behemoth's meter peaks, and Ying informs them that the monster is using its life force to launch a strong attack. Hao immediately charges at Tang while he tells the girls to help him hold off the behemoth. Tang then reveals that he wasn't a B rank as they had thought, and he has been hiding his true strength. He fires multiple icicles at Hao, but Hao swats them all with his beastified claws. As he closes the gap and prepares to make a kebab out of Tang, Tang notes that controlling a behemoth while fighting Hao at the same time takes a toll on him. Still, he parries Hao's strike, but Hao hits him in the gut and tries sending him crashing down the mountain. Still, Tang recovers his posture and then realizes that Hao plans to take him on alone, so he tells Hao not to be confident since Hao might not even win against him in peak condition, compared to now that he's injured. Tang starts by unleashing a frozen domain, and this covers Hao in a blizzard, which forcefully slows Hao down. Immediately, Tang follows up with an ice sword attack, but Hao blocks it with his claws. They clash for some minutes, and when Tang notices that they are equally matched, he watches as Hao flash steps, so he uses his ice to fire an area of effect attack, but Hao dodges it and sees a chance to finish him off. During that time, the girls are cornered by the behemoth, so Rui yells at Hao to wrap things up with Tang because they have nowhere else to run. As for Tang, he commends Hao's strength but tells Hao that he would be the winner. Hao makes an energy ball from his beast form, and he throws it at Tang, but Tang stops it with an ice barrier before changing its trajectory into the air, causing it to crash into the mountains. He then laughs at Hao and tells him that something so meager can't break his defense, but that's when he notices huge boulders falling from above. And they are a result of an energy ball that collided with the mountains. The rocks fall on him, and he ends up screaming for his life. Still, he dashes out thanks to using his ice at the last minute to protect himself, and calls Hao naive for thinking he can defeat him with such tricks. But to his surprise, Hao lunges at him and tells him he was waiting for him to come out, then he slashes him with his poisonous claws while saying no one will save him. Tang screams in pain and learns that Hao had used the queen bee poison on him and it has already reached his heart. So Hao tells Tang to surrender because if Tang uses his abilities, the poison will spread further and kill him. Realizing he's out of options, Tang activates his ice and creates a huge barrier with it, hoping to defeat Hao with it, but he ends up icing his environment and trapping his own corpse. Hao, upon seeing this, wonders why Tang was so stubborn that he didn't want to reveal news about Greenvine. Suddenly, Hao coughs up blood, and as he loses his balance, he notes that Tang was a strong, formidable foe who made him use a lot of his mana. As for the girls, while they hope for the best while expecting the worst, the behemoth suddenly stops moving, and they immediately realize that Hao has won. With that, their hero shows up shortly after, and after learning he's alright, they ask for Tang but learn that he had committed suicide to prevent getting interrogated. This makes them realize how Greenvine workers are more loyal than they expected. Rui advises them to return to headquarters first since they are in no shape to continue, and Ying agrees with her while saying that their methods were inappropriate. Curious, Rui asks them how they should handle the behemoth, and Ying tells them the monster has used up all its life force and has keeled over. Hao then reminds her of how Tang had called the headquarters for reinforcement, so he urges them to move fast. All of a sudden, the monster meter goes off violently, and Ying wonders if it's broken, but to their surprise, they see a beastified person approaching from afar off. At first, Ying wonders if he's Tang's reinforcement, but Hao disagrees after watching him come closer. She then warns Hao to be careful because the detector has never fluctuated so violently at such a distance before. Hao agrees with her and reveals he can feel how strong the person is. Just then, Rui has a good look at the humanoid and she realizes it's Zhao, her uncle. Surprised to hear him, they ask her how come, since they heard rumors that he had bestialized and lost his human senses. But even Rui has no answer to that. And that's when Zhao speaks up by revealing he had watched Hao's battle. So he praises Hao for fighting so well even in an incomplete evolved state, meaning Hao's potential is through the roof. With that, Zhao asks Hao to join him and create a new world with him. As Hao stiffens up and wonders what sort of rubbish the geezer is talking about, Rui drops her gun and dashes to her uncle, ignoring her teammates' warning to wait. When she gets closer and has a good look at him, she quivers with teary eyes and asks him if he still recognizes her. The others realize she's finished, so they wonder what to do to get her out of that situation. Hao recalls losing his senses the first time he had been beastified, and it was Xue who brought him back to his senses. Now he wonders if Rui can do the same for Zhao, but then he's very cautious and skeptical because of the intimidating aura that Zhao is oozing, and he knows it'll be unwise to provoke him. Meanwhile, Rui stretches her hand and beckons to Zhao to awaken, hoping he can come back with them, but he instantly plunges his hand through her and lifts her up, and she's completely shocked, so she asks him why. Zhao simply calls her an inferior creature, then he throws her back to her squad. Upon seeing Rui unconscious with a gaping hole, Ying struggles to maintain her sanity. Hao, on the other hand, brims with anger, and he transforms fully into a beast before lunging at Zhao and vowing to kill him. Zhao closely observes Hao's transformed state, and he says it isn't bad. He stops Hao's attack with 2 fingers and then kicks Hao before grabbing his face and telling Hao to look at the difference in their power. He hopes Hao will love to have such strength, but Hao still mutters that he'll kill Zhao. As a result, Zhao slams him on the ground. Out of nowhere, an Overlord-class aberration shows up with Xue riding it. She charges the monster at Zhao, so Zhao backs away from her brother. The powerful monster's descent scatters debris everywhere, and a rock knocks Ying out. With the monster between Hao and Zhao, Hao, who is barely conscious, wonders who has shown up. Upon seeing Xue, Zhao praises her control over her beastification, and he likens her to his kin he's been looking for. He's glad he followed his hunches to the town. He stretches his hand at her and tells her not to waste her talent, so he uses Hao as a bargaining chip by saying they are both welcome to step into the new world with him. Xue surprisingly shuts him up and denies being kin with him, but Xue trash talks Tang by calling him a piece of garbage who needed a crude device to control monsters, unlike her. Still, Zhao emphasizes that the gap between them is too far. Meanwhile, Jin eavesdrops on them, and he's pissed due to Xue's interference. Despite the unexpected turn of events, he wants her to fight Zhao till they wear themselves out so he can act then. He then opens his shirt, revealing a disgusting biological device that has been planted to help him resist Crimson Fog energy erosion. But it comes at a cost of burdening the body. Jin had gotten it from Hong, and he doesn't mind whatever happens to his body as long as he gets his revenge on Hao. With that, he scoots over to the behemoth, and he absorbs it. Upon noticing that Xue doesn't plan to join him, Zhao leaves disappointed and tells her that one day she'll realize the difference between herself and the old humans. With him out of the way, Xue rushes to her brother and apologizes for showing up late. She cries as she tells him that she was so afraid he would detest her if he saw her appearance, and also scared that she might lose control of her power and hurt him. Xue caresses his cheek and tells him not to look for her anymore, and as she prepares to give him something, she sees Jin absorbing the behemoth, so she tells him to back off. Realizing how far he has come in getting the powers needed to defeat Hao, Jin refuses, so he walks to Hao with the intent to burn him up through corrosion, but Xue appears right behind him and thwacks him with a kick. She then warns him to stay away from Hao or she'll cut him into 1,000 pieces. Still lying on the floor, Jin curses and vows to repay the siblings 100-fold. As for Xue, she hands Hao a red crystal before leaving and tells him to take care. After leaving, she arrives at a distant place in the mountains where a group of men lines up and welcomes her. Time passes and Ying tries waking Hao up in the hospital ward. After several attempts, she finally succeeds and thanks her stars that she won't be the only one left alive. At first, he teases her about the ward almost being his home due to how frequently he ends up there, but then he remembers Rui, so he worriedly asks Ying about her, and Ying's face immediately darkens before she tells him that Rui is gone. During that time, at the headquarters core medical room, the doctors informed General Song that there was no sign of vitality coming from Rui and her heart was destroyed, so there was nothing they could do. Young Shin, on the other hand, reminds General Song about a device that they can use, and he readily agrees to it. At the Technical Bureau's core laboratory, Ying's dad brings over the item, and while Song asks for details to know if it's feasible, the professor starts by admitting that the core of the Kulong's beast has regenerative functions, so if implanted into Rui's heart, there's a tendency that it can forcibly restart her life. Upon hearing him, the general tells him to carry it out, but then the prof asks just to be sure because there's a likelihood that Rui will become something else, like the monsters. But General Song tells him he'll take responsibility for all the consequences. With that said and done, they carry out the transplant, but before they activate the core, the prof asks Old Man Song one more time if he's sure about it, and the man affirms while urging them to activate it. Immediately, they activate it. Rui, who is in an unknown place, sees a Qilong, and she wonders what it's doing there after all Hao annihilated it. Inside the mindscape, the Qilong tells her that he plans to use her body as his vessel. It then stretches its tendrils to erode her, and in that instant, a loud sound with lightning erupts from the research building, loud and bright enough for Hao and Ying to notice it from that distance. Since Hao has been briefed about how General Song and the professor want to use Rui's body as an experiment, they run towards the building. Meanwhile, at their impending destination, Rui, who has undergone beastification, floats above the officers, and the prof realizes that their experiment has failed, so he asks the general what he plans to do. Song doesn't say anything, and when Rui fires an electric bolt at him, he swats it away with his bare hands before taking off his jacket and telling Yongshin to protect the others. Surprised, Yongshin asks him if he plans to take Rui on alone, and the general tells them they are not allowed to interfere. With that, he pulls out his sword and reminds them that Rui is his daughter, so he will take responsibility. Rui pauses for a moment before firing multiple bolts at her father, and the result causes a large explosion. Shortly afterwards, Ying and Hao arrived, and they were surprised to see that she looked just like Zhao. As they wonder why she's like that, she fires bolts at them, but her father intercepts all her attacks. While at it, Ying asks him why he's treating Rui that way, but he tells her it's a matter she cannot intervene in, and she should stand back. He then leaps at her, but she strikes him with a huge flash of lightning, and this shocks everyone, except for the professor, who notes that the general is still very soft. Despite being electrocuted, the old man caresses Rui's cheek and tells her he finally touched her. He then assures her that it's okay, and in that moment, her mask shatters. The professor is shocked, having witnessed it, and Ying is glad and relieved. Hao and Yongshin think alike as they are happy, and they watch the heartfelt reunion. Rui apologizes to her old man regarding Zhao, but he pats her, saying it's okay and permitting her to cry in his arms. Meanwhile, at Greenvine headquarters, Shi tells Hong to cease all capture operations that instant, but Hong tells her that it touches the core interest of the company and it isn't something he can decide on his own. She then yells at him to tell the others that if they get Hao hurt, the price Hong will pay will be far higher than his gains. As she storms out, Hong silently calls her a spoiled weapon that's only valuable for the research on the aberration control device. Meanwhile, outside the military institute, Rui broods all alone, so Hao shows up with a drink and says it's unlike her to sulk. She then tells him that she's been thinking about her old man because he's been sleeping in his office for days. Also, her uncle's accident and the state of things make her helpless, so she doesn't know what to do. She really wishes to help her father, but doesn't know what to do. Surprised to see her act that way, Hao opens up about how even she can get troubled after all he thought she was born looking like a know-it-all. Curious, she asks him what he means by it, and he goes down the rabbit hole, narrating how she had detained him, forced him into her squad, and made lots of demands. This pisses her off, so she tells him to shut it. But then he doubles down by informing her that she's the most resilient person he's ever met and she shouldn't be trapped in the shadows of the past. As he holds her shoulder and encourages her to understand her strength and protect the people she cares about while figuring out a way to bring her uncle back, Rui blushes, and then her mood lightens up, so she tells him she'll think carefully about it. 1 week later, a lot of commandants are summoned for an emergency meeting and they wonder what must have happened. Just then, General Song briefs them about the whole aberration crisis and how, just recently, a Calamity-class aberration known as the Titan Bug King has slipped through the defense line they had set up at the northern borders and has currently begun breeding in the jungle 20 kilometers away from District 7. As he concludes by telling them that once the bugs finish breeding, it'll be a catastrophe, the officers realize they're in for it, and they murmur about what Zhao's incident was. General Song then informs them that he has ordered the Blazing Blood elites to withdraw and return, but it'll take at least 48 hours, and since they cannot delay any longer, the higher-ups have issued an order to find the beast nest at all costs and tie it down to prevent it from completing its breeding. He then asks them who'd like to go, but nobody signifies. Suddenly, Lin offers to go, and right after, Hao does the same. Surprised to see Hao, who wants to get stronger by going on such a dangerous mission, many of the officers wonder who he is. So some educate them that he's a rookie who has fought behemoth-class monsters twice. Lin starts by telling how dangerous the mission is, but Hao doesn't back down, and he reminds Lin that the more dangerous part is coordinating the squad along with the general staff, which is why he should stay by General Song's side. Lin totally agrees and backs down. General Song orders Hao to come to his office, then he instructs the other officers to prepare all necessary support, just in case. Later at the office, Old Man Song tells Hao that due to Rui's condition, she cannot act as the captain of the Blazing Blood Squad, which is why he plans to appoint him as the new captain, then transfer Ying and Lin to work with him. He tells Hao he'll also get access to classified information, and Hao readily accepts the role. Moments later, Ying gets the memo, so she goes to meet Hao and teases him about his new role. He then asks her about her new equipment, and she tells him it'll come in handy while saying it was quite generous of him to splurge some capital on her. Just then, Snitch and the younger Lin show up and happily call Hao their captain, but he tells them to stop because it'll make him cringe. As they prepare to set out for their journey, Ying asks about Rui, but Hao tells her Rui needs more time to figure herself out. When they get outside, they are surprised to see Rui waiting outside their vehicle. Ying jubilates when she sees her, and Rui explains that she has officially returned and has been approved to join their operation, so she calls Hao captain as she asks him to let her go with them. Having been teased, Hao asks her to drive while he calls her a new member, but Snitch chooses to do that instead since it feels very out of place. Still, Rui grabs the wheel and drives them to their destination. On the way, Hao asks her if she's sure, and she tells him she has made up her mind and won't be lost anymore. Meanwhile, in the jungle, the king of bugs continues breeding its offspring. At Greenvine headquarters, Hong informs one of his underlings about the Titan Bug King, which cohabits with several bug kings, and reveals that their people have detected the crystallized tissue the bug released when laying eggs, and the tissue plays a key role in the artificial crystal core they are researching. However, the military people are heading there and won't allow them to get it, which is why Hong wants the man to steal the crystallized tissue during chaos and not leave any trail for the military to track down. The man being given the order is known as Thousand Faces, an A rank who works for Greenvine. Some hours later, after arriving at the jungle, Hao's team notices that the jungle is covered in thick fog and swarming with aberrations, so they hop off their vehicle and plan to go in there on foot. With Hao as captain, he cautions the group to be careful. Snitch immediately complains, seeing that they'll have to walk the remaining 20 kilometers, but then they explain that it's because of the thick fog. Hao then asks Ying if she can blow it away, but she tells him it's impossible. Suddenly, a creature drops from above, but thanks to Hao, they react just in time to avoid it crushing them. He then informs them that he can sense the monster, but the fog is too thick to let him see its exact location. As if it read Hao's mind, the fog around them disperses, revealing a giant insect. After observing it, Rui suspects that the insect must have absorbed the fog to mark them as its prey and the area as its hunting ground so that the others won't interfere. Judging by the detector, Ying tells them that it's a behemoth-class aberration, and Hao wonders if it's guarding the king bug. Without time to think, Hao enters battle mode and tells them to attack the creature at maximum power. Meanwhile, in the Titan Hive, Bloodhowl Beastman senses 1,000 Faces and vows to use him as a pledge of allegiance to Rui's uncle. Once 1,000 Faces spots his men agitated after seeing Hive Corruptor, a behemoth class, he tells them to stop and informs them that their job is to get their hands on the crystalline tissue before the military arrives. As for the military squad, Ying amps them with her wind attribute and they go all out on the insect. While Lin tanks the insect's hit, Rui and Snitch shoot at it, and Hao leaps into the air to deliver the death blow. With such a meager tactic and within a few minutes, they take down the monster. This surprises Hao, so he feels something is off since it isn't easy to defeat a behemoth class, but Ying, who's glad they took it down, moves towards it to check it out. Just then, Hao yells at her to come back because he senses something is about to come out of the creature's body. Later that night, at Greenvine headquarters, Hong summons Xue and tells her that the council hasn't approved her decision, and he has urgent news to tell her, and it's about Hao. While she wonders why they aren't ready to let it go, Hong reveals that he went behind the council's back to tell him that the army has ordered Hao to lead a squad to intercept the Titan Bug King. Xue gets shocked when shown the information, and she wonders why the military would do something so rash because the Titan Bug is an S-class aberration that even she cannot mind control despite using all her might. Xue feels bad that the military wants to throw her brother's life away, so she asks Hong what he's getting at by telling her, and he tells her that he wants them to cooperate since he never thought of eliminating Hao. Xue gives it a thought and agrees with him with the sole purpose of preventing her brother from throwing his life away. Back in the forest, as Ying rushes to check out the insect, suddenly a huge moth appears and spreads its wings. Immediately they look at it, they all suffer from a mental attack, so Hao orders them not to look at the wing patterns while the monster hasn't stabilized. He then opens his eyes and tries charging at it, but to his surprise, he sees his dark self standing not too far off, eager to see him. Rui, on the other hand, sees Zhao while Ying is stuck examining a virtual board which shows her brainwave spectrums and environmental parameters, and she gets so intrigued by it. Meanwhile, on the outside, Lin wakes up and complains about how his head feels like it has been struck by a hammer. He then looks at them all trapped in the illusion, so he jolts Snitch awake. They are immediately confused when they wonder why the others haven't woken up, but then they conclude that it's because the others are way beyond ordinary. Lin breaks it down by emphasizing how people with strong mental fortitude and desires can easily fall for illusory attacks, unlike shallow-minded people like them, who can be easily snapped out of illusions. Lin sees the giant moth is about to make its move, so he orders Snitch to report to the headquarters and request backup from a mental-type expert while he plans to find a way to interfere with the monster. Suddenly, the monster makes multiple bubbles and fires them at the soldiers. Lin quickly drags Hao away and blocks the attack while Snitch shoots at the bubbles. After giving it a trial, the men realize that a direct assault won't work, and they'll have to rely on the trapped soldier to wake up as soon as possible on their own. In Hao's mindscape, his dark side shows him his true transformation and complains about how stressful it's been to keep restraining the form. In one move, he lunges at Hao, but Hao fights back. Just then, his dark self uses Shadow Sneak to pull up right behind him, and then he tells Hao to stop struggling, but embrace the beast power like Zhao, and only then can he find Shui and do whatever he wants. The Shadow Self throws a punch, but Hao counters and tries using poison. Immediately, the dark Hao leaps back and reveals he knows every move like the back of his hand. Seeing his dark self leap away, Hao asks him if he's scared of getting hurt, and then he vows not to become his dark self. This pisses his dark self off, but Hao lunges at him and starts pummeling him. Shocked by Hao's willpower, his dark self asks him if he has a death wish, but Hao says it's his resolve to find Shui and stop others from experiencing what he did. With that, he strikes his dark self and the form starts disintegrating. Rui, on the other hand, falls after clashing with her uncle, but then she gets up to her feet and admits that he is strong enough to induce despair. She then reveals that back then in Suyin Town, when he had tried to kill her, she felt something aside from fear in her heart, and it was anger. She opens her fist and produces an electric bolt before dashing to clash with Zhao. She then calls him a shameful traitor who isn't like her gentle uncle from her memories, and sooner or later, she'll get stronger than him and will personally drag him back. She unleashes a fiery attack that obliterates him. Now left alone, she realizes she's trapped in a mental space, and from what she has learned so far, she will need external interference alongside her will to break her free from the illusion. Hao, who is also facing the same thing, tries swinging his fist, and that's when he notices a crack in space and hears Ying's chant, so he realizes she's also trying to break loose. He immediately tears the rift open, and doing that frees them from the illusion. When they open their eyes, they see a tornado crashing into the giant bug with Ying fully awake. She thanks her stars for charging the device Hao had bought her because it lessened the time needed to manifest her wind ability. Hao thanks her for her help, and as he notes that mental-type aberrations are terrifying and rare, he asks if Rui can see the monster's position. So he tells her the focal point is the center of the monster's wing patterns. She pulls out her gun and aims at the pattern, but then the moth tries flying off. Ying doesn't give it a chance, and she uses her wind to keep it at bay for Rui to shoot it down. As soon as the shot connects, the monster crashes into the ground, and Hao informs them that the body seems fragile, so it's easy to eliminate. Rui finds it amusing that an aberration was using another one as a cultivation vessel, so she suggests reporting the symbiote to their superiors as soon as possible. Meanwhile, Thousand Faces watches them from afar and shows his bosses a visual feed of the events. As he notes that Hao's team will soon resume their search for the Bug King, Thousand Faces is told to record a visual of them, as they plan to use him to lure a particular person. Later that evening, Hong goes to meet Xue, who wants to know the situation, and he briefs her about how fast the squad is moving, saying they've contacted the guards. He then tells her that they also need to hurry up and implement a formidable plan, so she asks him what he wants her to do, and he tells her to use her powers to control the Bug King and evacuate across the border. Xue tells him that it's impossible with her current strength, but then he tells her that they have corresponding support on their side. With that, he shows her the feed and tells her that the group has developed a new ability, so as long as she's willing to cooperate, they can completely maximize her ability. He then asks her if she's willing to accept the support ability for Hao's sake, and she agrees to it. Hao and his squad return to their vehicle and drive through the forest. While at it, Ying notes down the behemoth class they had just fought and says her dad will have a lot to study. Lin wonders if Hao will be okay after absorbing a behemoth-class beast core, but Rui tells him that Hao will be fine after all. He just overcame his own hurdle. This means that by the time Hao wakes up, his power might have risen to another level. Snitch realizes it's the first time he's ever seen Hao absorb a monster core. He feels reassured that with Hao getting stronger and Lin with them, things won't go awry. Just then, Hao wakes up and tells Snitch to slow down because about 200 meters to the right, they have guests. Rui and the others are surprised, so they ask him if he can sense aberrations from such a distance. But Hao tells them they aren't monsters ahead, but humans. With impeccable timing, Bloodhowl appears and lands right in front of them, yelling that the path is closed for them. They immediately get out of their vehicle and are surprised to see a conscious beastman, so they ask him who he is and why he's stopping them. Bloodhowl introduces himself and dashes at Hao while telling them that they have no right to set their eyes on something his leader, Zhao, has his eyes on. With that, he declares that the egg sac is theirs. Then he tries to grab Hao, but Hao easily evades all his moves. Pissed, Bloodhowl calls him a sissy for just dodging. Hao stands his ground, and as Bloodhowl throws his fist to ruin his face, Ying yells at Hao to watch out, but Hao grabs Bloodhowl's fist with no effort and commends the brute's strength. This shocks the huge guy, so he leaps back to create some distance between them. In that instant, Hao uses Shadow Sneak on him and lands a clean hit on his chin. He continues raining down his hits and feels insulted that Bloodhowl came to intercept them with his meager level of strength. Bloodhowl, on the other hand, finds it hard to take in that Hao is far stronger than him. Thousand Faces, who has been quietly observing, is also shocked that Hao's strength has reached the S-class threshold, so he plans to report it to Hong immediately. Upon seeing the aftermath of Hao's battle, Snitch praises him, but Hao tells him to tie Bloodhowl and throw him in the trunk of his car. He notes that with Zhao's people popping up, things have gotten complicated, which is why they must find the Bug King as quickly as possible. Moments later, they arrive at the nest, and Hao notes that if they had arrived any later, then they might not have been able to stop the disaster that would have occurred. He quickly orders his squad into position and tells them to prepare for a counterattack. Rui does as ordered, and they carve their way into the nest. Inside, they maintain their formation and deal with the insects. They go at it for about 2 hours, and as they hold out against the waves, Ying learns from Rui that Old Man Song and the Vanguard forces will arrive soon. Suddenly, the Bug King gives up on spawning more insects, and he joins the horde in battle. Out of nowhere, wind slashes appear and cut down the monsters like sashimi, and when they look at the source, they realize it's General Song. Having witnessed the power firsthand, Hao realizes the gap between other rankers and the S rank. The other vanguards join in, and they rain their firepower on the insects to give General Song enough room to use his power. While Yongshin sees his brother and joins in to help, Rui wonders if her dad is in top condition to fight. Hao, on the other hand, marveled after seeing the legendary spatial type ability the old man had demonstrated. General Song traps the Titan Bug King in a spatial barrier, and this causes Yongshin to be hurt due to his old wounds, but the old man tells him it's nothing. After all, he's just holding out till the main forces arrive. To their surprise, a helicopter arrives, and Hong and his crew head to meet with the soldiers. Hong then thanks them for their help so far in weakening the Bug King and tells them they can take their leave. Immediately, when Yongshin sees him, he is surprised that Hong's forces are the ones they were depending on. General Song asks Hong to make sense of the situation, so Hong reveals that he was the one who orchestrated the whole thing by luring the Bug King across the border and letting the two sides mutually destroy each other so he can easily control it to lay eggs for him. Ying yells at him to know if he's crazy because the eggs will cause absolute devastation, but Hong couldn't care less, and he informs them that the eggs will be exchanged for drugs to suppress the Red Fog's erosion. Also, with the technology, they can mass-produce super soldiers. He cuts to the chase and signals to Xue to take the stage. When Hao sees her, he realizes she's his sister, so he yells at Hong to know what she did to her. Rather than Xue responding, she uses her ability to try to get the Titan insect out of the barrier. Hao then dashes at Xue, but one of Hong's underlings tries to intercept him, so he tells her to get lost, and he knocks her away. While they are fighting, Xue flies towards the barrier, and it opens up for her to merge with the Titan bug. In that moment, her pupils split, and she controls the insect by using it to command the other Bug Kings. Hong then tells them to bear witness to what will happen when Xue severs her connection with the Titan bug. Enraged, Hao meets with General Song and tells him to open up the barrier for him to go in and save Xue. The girls immediately hold him to stop him from acting brashly, but he disagrees with them and walks to Song while saying he's the only one who can wake her up. Song listens to his plea and orders his men to provide full cover for Hao while he opens a 3-second passage from the rear flank. Everybody immediately takes a position, and Hao dashes into the barrier with the hope of rescuing his sister. Once inside, Rui gets worried and watches him as he calls out to Xue. While Hao tries to communicate with Xue, the soldiers outside try their very best to hold out against the rampaging monsters, and Hong makes fun of their efforts. As one of the men fires spikes at the monsters, Lin puts up a defense to stop Thousand Faces, but then another Green Vine member creates a blinding light, hence stopping the defense team in their tracks. Thousand Faces then tries to get past them, but Rui blasts out a wave of electric charge, which causes him to stop. Then she vows not to let Thousand Faces affect Hao. While the military fights both the monsters and the members of Green Vine, Hao watches as his sister screams and loses control for a bit before telling him to run. Hao notes that the Beast Core's power is the key to the fusion, and he plans to cut the connection. Rui sees him and yells at him not to do it. She calls it suicide, but he refuses and strikes the monster in the chest, breaking its scale and carving a path. Then he scoops out the core and tries absorbing it directly. Xue suffers from the backlash, and Thousand Faces calls him a madman for performing such feats. As a result, Hao bleeds profusely from his mouth and nose, but he doesn't stop till he succeeds. Right after, he meets his sister, who complains about how dark and painful everywhere and everything is. So he caresses her, and she happily reunites with him. Having witnessed the daunting act, Rui cries, but Hong is shocked by Hao's potential. All of a sudden, Hao loses consciousness and falls. Xue grabs him and grits her teeth as she stares daggers at Hong for using her to hurt Hao. Pissed, she turns to them and attacks them with one of the beast's powers. Thousand Faces teleports between the attacks and he nearly gassed out, but Hong and the others make their retreat. All of a sudden, a wave of blades flies in their direction, cutting the others, but Hong's assistant saves him just in time from being decapitated. That's when they realize the perpetrator is none other than Zhao. The aforementioned calls it a perfect opportunity, seeing that the obstacles of the old order are all gathered and destroying each other. General Song grits his teeth as he finally sees his brother, and Zhao says his greeting, while noting that his current form is thanks to him. Old Man Song accepts his responsibility of being the cause of letting him explore the dangerous dungeon back then, but then he warns Zhao, saying the path Zhao is taking is a dead end. Zhao, on the other hand, calls it a brand new future and tells them to observe as the beast men are breaking free from their shackles and controlling power, so he calls it the perfect evolution. He asks them if they've made up their mind to join his faction, but Rui yells at him to wake up, and she vows not to sit and watch as the crimson fog corrodes his mind. Zhao then tries to make his point clear by emitting an ominous aura, one so powerful that he is classified as the highest S-class threat level. Realizing how dire the situation is, General Song tells Xue that if she'd like to protect Hao, then she'll have to fight. She readily agrees and suggests they attack Zhao together. During that time, Rui and Ying try moving Hao away, but Ying realizes how hot Hao's skin is. Right behind them, Zhao fires tendrils of energy at his brother, and his brother uses a barrier to block them. Xue follows up by firing orbs at Zhao, but he easily offsets them with a sword he made from his energy. Still persistent, Xue commands the insects to charge at him, but he easily slices them off. Rui, who is desperate to wake Hao up, tries using her electromagnetic pulse to kickstart his heart, and she tells him how his sister and her father are fighting Zhao. Ying notices that Rui's body is mutating while she's actively trying to wake Hao, but Rui herself doesn't care one bit about it. The other two, who are fighting Zhao, try their best to keep him at bay, but he outclasses them and nearly impales his older brother. Fortunately, Xue stops him by firing a beam from her behemoth. He dodges the beam and appears right behind her, and watches as she suffers from a migraine due to using her power excessively. General Song asks Xue if she's alright, and she fights the pain and assures him she's fine. She then gathers her power to release an ultimate skill, so Song does the same by creating a black hole, and together they throw it at Zhao. Despite seeing the deadly attacks homing in on him, Zhao charges right at them and uses his brute strength to cancel them out. Song, who has gone past his limit, falls and coughs, and Xue is concerned, but Zhao shows up and tells them it's over. Just then, a red maelstrom of energy shoots out from Hao, and Zhao senses he's awake. Hao, already on his feet, emanates the deadly aura of the Titan Bug King, and this gets everyone terrified as they wonder if he's still himself, but he assures them that he's perfectly fine. Zhao is impressed with Hao's level of dominance in taming such monstrous energy and reaching the S-rank threshold, so he calls Hao his kind, but Hao rejects it by saying he doesn't have any interest in turning into something like Zhao. Zhao then tries to talk some sense into Hao, as he's pissed that Hao, who surpasses him in talent, does not strive to evolve, so he changes tactics by planning to beat some sense into Hao. With that, he shoots out his tendrils at Hao, but Hao easily breaks them with his claws. He then dashes at Zhao and tells the others to join him in the attack. As he trades blows with Zhao, they leap at the dude with their techniques, but Zhao swats them off like flies and tells them they are in the way. He then beckons to Hao to show him his true strength. They continue clashing, but Zhao is still not impressed, and he knocks Hao back while saying his level isn't enough, but that's when he realizes that Hao simply wanted to get a hold of him. Now that Hao has his arm clamped, he amps his punch and strikes Zhao squarely in the face, saying that the hit is for Rui. The aftermath sends the geezer crashing, and he finally acknowledges Hao's strength. As he tries to expand his power, he realizes he has consumed a lot and declares that he'll let Hao off the hook for that day and deal with him another time. As he prepares to take his exit, Rui keeps him in check with her electricity, and she vows not to let him go. Hao compresses his energy into a ball similar to a spirit bomb, and as he talks about how his current power once made him fearful, he admits that he got obsessed with it. He throws it at Zhao and tells him to take it. Zhao tries his very best to hold on, but the overwhelming power explodes and strips him of his transformation. Now back to his human form, Zhao apologizes to his big bro for causing him trouble. Rui gets moved to tears after witnessing her uncle's return, and with that, General Song announces that the mission is successfully completed. Time passes, and the mission that they successfully completed by expelling the Titan Bug King, capturing Zhao, and crushing the Green Vines group plan echoes in the military's Hall of Fame. Not long after, Zhao regained considerable influence within the military and the beast morphing research plan, which he spearheaded and gained support from the higher-ups. One day after training, Yongxin finds it amusing that the other soldiers want to spar with Hao after learning his rank has dropped to B from S. Hao then says that he won't mind beating them until they are convinced that his skills haven't regressed. Yongxin asks about his body since the cost of the last battle was very great, and Hao tells him that he's been taking medicine made from the Bug King's crystal and the effects are good. He mentions that Xue and Rui are also using it, and their erosion conditions have stabilized. Yongxin reveals that Hong has confessed to all his crimes and the Green Vine group has been apprehended. Hearing this, Hao asks if he'll get a huge bonus for his help so far, and he reminds Yongshin that he has his sister to take care of, so living expenses are higher than before. Yongshin promises to get a word in for him, and as Hao leaves home to meet his sis, Yongshin sends his regards. When Hao gets home, Shue prepares dinner and informs him that they have a guest. He gets surprised, but then sees Rui, who tells him that she came to crash his dinner. Hao finds it strange that she'll choose to eat with him when she can get better quality food by staying with her dad, but then she reveals she's pissed at her old geezer for denying her request to see her uncle. After watching her tantrum, Hao internally notes that she's a difficult lady to raise. He then tries to pacify her by saying her uncle must be very busy due to the state of the drugs still being in early production. Rather than continue the conversation, she switches up by asking him about his new job as an instructor. Hao tells her that Yongshin recommended him, but then she surprises him by saying she heard a rumor that his underlings are not convinced he's capable. Hao puts 2 and 2 together and realizes Ying must have spied on him and told her, so he curses her internally before continuing his meal. After having dinner with them, Rui prepares to leave, and she tells Shue that her dad will search the entire city if she doesn't go back soon. Since it's late, Shue tells Hao to walk Rui back, and he finds it strange since she can take down 10 men at once, but Shue clobbers him because he's too dumb to take a hint. So she plays the role of the perfect wingman, and he has no choice but to walk Rui back. Outside, as they head back, Rui thanks Hao for helping her bring back her uncle, but then he reminds her that it was their agreed deal. She gets pissed with him a bit, and then asks him if he thinks her uncle will wake up, and he assures her. Just then, she spots a shooting star and tells him to look at it. The dunce simply picks up his phone and calls Shue to look outside to see the shooting star. When she realizes he's still with Rui, she scolds him for calling her and tells him to spend his time with the shooting star. Now that peace is gradually returning, Hao notes that the road is still long, but as long as they keep working hard, everything will eventually get better.